All right, so 2021 Olsen's Fantasy Baseball preview. Definitely different than doing it on Microsoft Word. Tired of typing. Paz and I kicking it back to the old days, uncut sports talk. I actually kind of miss doing it. It's been what? Actually, because Duke wasn't born yet, so it's been almost 2 years since we've been on.
I was still actually living up in my old. I was still living in my old apartment, so that was 2+ years ago.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, here we are again. We'll start intro, just overall draft thoughts. Man, I think maybe this year's the last year we do the slow roll. It's rough, man. Like you want people to move faster. Everyone's busy. And then everyone kind of moves slower. You get a nice run for a round or two. Everyone stops. You hope it goes faster. It's just so hard to get everybody on the same night, man. Like we all, people got kids, pets, work. Everybody's on a different schedule. It's cool to slow roll, but I feel like it's hurt me for sure. Like, and we'll discuss that later on when we get to my team. But I know I had reached out to you on the side saying like, man, I just made a massive mistake because I was paying attention to updating everything and I didn't even realize I had keepers. But we'll talk about that later. But I don't know, man. I feel like last year was a little rough. This year, I think, was just a little rougher. Almost took us 2 weeks. But I don't know. What are your overall thoughts on the slow roll?
So the slow roll is a good thing for professionals like us. Everyone's got a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, you have a kid. You have another one on the way. I'm sure there's other people in the league. A couple of people that I know personally have kids that it's not easy for them to just get away for 3.5 hours on a night and get a draft done. So yeah, the slow roll in theory is a great idea, but it does get to the point where you feel like you have a lot of time, and then we just finished our draft yesterday, and like you said, it started 2 weeks ago, and you just don't realize where the time goes when you give people. And I'm not saying this to anyone in general or to slight anyone or anything like that. It's just when you give people 8 hours, if they take the full 8 hours, that's pretty much the entire day. When our timer goes from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., it's only 14 hours. So there could be the potential that only one person drafts on a day. And then that ultimate, when you're talking about a dynasty league like ours and deep benches where you're making 35 picks, or it's 35 rounds, most people have about 5-6 keepers. So it's, everyone's making about 30 picks, let's call it. 30 picks times 10 people, that's 300 picks that need to be made. And if there's a day or two that go by where only 2 or 3 picks are made, you're starting to set yourself back, and the season comes up on you quickly. It's 3 days away at this point, and we just finished. So it's it's a great idea in theory, but sometimes it can come back and bite you in the ass because there's just not enough time in the day for everyone to do their work and deal with their kids and deal with their personal lives and their work lives to get stuff like this done. So I'm glad we did it. I'm glad we got it done. Here we are. So I'll leave it to you as the host.
Yeah. I agree with all that. One thing I noticed this year that I thought was crazy, and I know we talked about a lot, definitely different from most years. I thought that the players, it really caught me off guard how unexpected, and I was just completely unprepared for such a steep fall off from like a tier 1 group of players or even a tier 2 group of players to the next level. I know you and I had talked. Lance Lynn was like the 12th best pitcher available. Like, and that includes keepers. I mean, like he's the 12th overall pitcher. I know Soriano and I had joked about it a little bit when we were discussing our trade with Wheeler. Like, how is Dylan Bundy in the top 20? Like, I felt like it caught me off guard. Maybe I didn't realize it as much when we were doing the keepers, but when we got to the point where we were drafting, I mean, even, I thought, and again, we'll go over each team, but even for myself, man, I was like, I did exactly what I wanted in the off season to set up to be able to redraft Scherzer and get a better rotation by getting Wheeler and making those trades to improve my team. And then all of a sudden, like I'm looking at this pitching list and I'm like, Mike Minor. He's just not ownable. He's just not a good pitcher. And, John Means was there and I looked at him a lot and my dad took him. But I mean, like, there's just the list to fill my last two spots were like literally pulling teeth. And that's never really happened before. There's always been a time like last year, I was able to snag Jordan Montgomery, which look, for an 8-man rotation, just how our league goes, that's a formidable guy to have in the 8 spot. But it was just, I felt like the cliff was such a fall off. And I don't know if it's COVID related, where, the predictions and point system, no one knows what's going to happen. I don't know if it's a lot of these teams talking about 180 innings is going to be the max for some of these pitchers because of last year's shortened season and, cautious with injuries now. But I just felt like this is the first year where I usually come out of the baseball draft and either say my team is good or great, or, I have a good feeling on it. And I usually have a good feeling, especially early on the draft, and a couple guys I write down that I want to snag later. Like, I felt like the cliff on guys being selected and the fall off was so steep, and just came like, it was sharp and steep, came out of absolutely nowhere. Did you notice that at all? Did you notice there was a big just decline out of nowhere, or you were drafting and then all of a sudden you're in the 8th round and you're like, how are these the guys that are left in the 8th round? I don't know, but it definitely caught me off guard, and it definitely messed me up. I don't know if you noticed the same thing, but what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I did. And I think part of it is the fact that we do have keepers. So a lot of the, Coles, the Groms, Bowers, I've Shane Bieber, that I acquired from you in a great trade a couple of years ago. But guys like that, they're off the board. So you had the number 1 overall pick, and we'll get to it. But your number 1 overall pick was Max Scherzer. And yes, Max Scherzer is still a great pitcher. Certainly not what he was a couple of years ago, but that just gives you an idea of that's the top of the pitching market that we started at, and it only got worse from there. I feel like my rotation has a lot of decent arms in it, but I'm going to just bring it back to like what I think the Yankees rotation is going to be this year. It's the Yankees rotation. I feel like is either going to be great or it's going to be horrible. And I feel like that could be very similar to my own fantasy team and a couple of other teams on, in our league, where you might have that number 1 starter like the Yankees do. You have Garrett Cole, I have Shane Bieber, but then I took a flyer on Lamet, who he just threw his first 1 inning of Cactus League ball. Sonny Gray is shut down, or was shut down because of his back, and who knows where and when he's going to really be back in the rotation. So I have a guy like Ryu, who, yeah, he might have a good year, but I don't know. He's like my second best starter. So yeah, it gets pretty deep. It gets pretty steep pretty quickly. I even just instead of getting out of a contract with Bumgarner, like Bumgarner is probably like my 4th or 5th starter. I just kept him because I didn't know what was going to be available down the line, and I had to use a keeper on him and use, I think, like a 9th or 10th round draft pick, where if this was a redraft league, he probably wouldn't go until around 25 or 30. But with what was available, I had to keep him because it's such slim picking. So yeah, I completely agree with you. On the pitching side, it got deep. It got the waters got deep really quickly, and I think that's just a testament to how pitching is nowadays. I'm sure the deadening of the balls is probably going to help a little bit with those middle tier pitchers, where the guys that had 4 or 5 ERAs or 5 ERAs, maybe they bring them down to about 4, a little below 4, and that can move the pitching market up. But from what we saw last year, if you don't have a true number 1, or if your team doesn't have a true number 1 starter, there's either number 1 starters out there, or they're like 3-4 starters. There's really not that traditional like pecking order anymore in a rotation. It's really just top guys, and then there's a huge fall off just in real life baseball. So that ultimately happens in fantasy as well.
Yeah. And just, last but not least, and then we'll get into the team's overall season outlook. You just mentioned it, that's something I definitely, in terms of style of draft, the deadening of the balls is a big thing for me. 2 years ago, we heard about how they wanted more offense back in the game, and I basically just drafted an entire offensive team. I actually that was the year I believe I lost to McIndoe in the title. I've been in the title a lot the last couple of years, but I just have not been able to close out. I think I closed out the year that I made the Bieber trade for you. So
Yeah, you
wow,
did.
that's going to hurt me probably for the next 9 to 12 years, because you could essentially keep extending him and keep him the rest of your career. And that's something Soriano has that we'll talk about later with Tatis, where he could essentially have Fernando Tatis for the rest of his career. And I mean, that's the 31st round, which is even more insane, or 32nd round. But I think that was the year I won it. And that year I went, all pitching when they were trying to bring the offense down and the steroid talk was back up. And then, the following year I went all offense because they, like I said, bringing the offense back up. And then the year after that, I think I went all pitching, and I kind of I tried. That was my plan going in, but the counter argument to the deadening of the balls is this 180 limit. I don't know if this is going to be a serious thing. Are they really going to do that? We've seen GMs a lot with these young arms and young pitchers. Another thing we'll talk about later, especially with my team, that's one of my big strategies. Late of the year, I always grab someone. Your Bieber is a perfect example. Alcantara, Savelli, who I ended up trading to Soriano, but I always end up spotting those people in the middle. And I don't know what that's going to be, but for me, my overall season outlook was I thought the deadening of the balls would increase some of those pitchers, and I tried to go down that line until the steep fall off we talked about kind of caught me off guard. Did you have any plan going in just based on the rumblings you've been hearing with the 180, with the deadening of the balls? Did you try to focus on offense? Anything stick out to you in terms of your draft strategy?
Yeah, so I'm sort of a fantasy baseball rookie. This is your league. It's been going on for 20 something years.
Yeah.
You and I really only met each other, about 5 years ago at this point. So I'm a newbie to your league. And I'm really just a newbie to fantasy baseball in general. I've really only played fantasy football for my entire life. So I don't really know, or I should say when I started in the league, I really was completely in over my head. Especially with it being a dynasty league and everyone having been in it for a while, and I took over a team, and look, the first year I think I won like 5 weeks or something like that, and it's just been a huge learning curve for me. So I think I've taken, over the past few seasons, I've taken points from you, since you and I talk about everything sports pretty much every day, and from a couple of my other friends who are really good at fantasy baseball. And this year I made it a point to concentrate more on pitching, because I've gone strictly hitting the last few years. And my best pitcher, outside of Bieber last year, because I made that acquisition from you, my best pitcher in years past have been guys like, a down Marco Gonzalez, or basically name any third tier starter, and they were then my number one starters on my team. So I made it a real emphasis this year to really make sure I had, sort of top of the line guys. And when we get to my team, we can talk about that. But if guys like Lamet and Sonny Gray and Ryu, and of course Bieber, if they live up to what their expectation could be, and with the increasing of the deadening of the balls, I think that they could all turn out to be top 25 type starters, and I think that will help propel me forward, because I think I did do a good job with both my keepers and my hitting scenarios, though we'll get to that again, where one of my big keepers from last year, Eloy, is obviously out for the year, and I took a hit with Voigt going on the DL as well. So I'm sort of starting in a little bit of a hole with a couple of my big power guys. But look, I'm ready. I'm much better making moves on the hitting front than I am on the pitching front. So I'm more confident that I'll be able to fill those holes because they're on the batting front. So it was really, I made it a point to make sure to concentrate on gathering starters that I thought could be more like top 25 to 30 guys. We can't hear you.
Sorry, I muted as I was drinking. All right, so let's get into it here. What we'll do is we'll basically do it exactly how we used to do our Microsoft Word previews. We'll go 10 to 1. Top six get into the playoffs. First and second seed get a bye. 3 versus 6, 4 versus 5, that type of thing. So we'll start at 10. I'll give my opinion on it, and then let me know where you kind of rank them, and we'll get to the end and just kind of re-go over the rankings again. So number 10 for me this year is going to be Jimmy King James. Can you pull up his roster for me?
Yeah, I have it. You want me to share my screen with it?
Yeah.
All right.
So just statistically, I have Jimmy with 3rd ranked infield in the league, 5th ranked outfield, and overall, I think he has the 5th ranked offense. But where he really takes a hit, and we'll get into why. 11 ranked starting pitching. He's got the worst relievers, I think, and overall that in turns to the worst overall staff. So I'd say my concerns for Jimmy, in a year when the balls and the bats are deadened, I think you really want to be on the plus side of pitching, as we really just discussed, and you want to be on, let's call it, the negative side of offense. And he's on the flip side of that. Like I just said, 3, 5, and 5 for the offensive end, 11, 12, or yeah, how many teams do we have? Oh, we have 10. So
we have
10
teams. Yep.
Yeah, 9, 10, and 10 for staff. And I think that really hurts. So I'll start with, Kirk there, Aliendo. He was the 3 on the depth chart for a little while. I saw he moved up to 2, but Jimmy waited for a while to get a catcher, which, look, I don't mind. This was really the first year that I went out and kind of stuck my leg out and grabbed a catcher, but to make your only catcher, and maybe he makes some moves in the next 2 days to make that your only catcher, a guy who's probably going to be is definitely going to be on the negative side of a playing time split. He's looking at like a 70-30, 60-40 type of split. And then, that's a pretty serious situation when you're getting a guy to play 2 weeks for you. And, I'm not going to call it a prime spot, but you're losing out, maybe 10 points a week, 15 points a week. And a lot of these matchups are close, man. Like, there's a lot of times where you're like, man, I lost by 3.3 or, 10.3, or comes down to 1 start. And that hurts me. And so that's a big thing. Carlos Santana, a lot of us talked about this in the chat and just kind of bantering, like every one of us passed up on him. He was sitting there forever. I mean, there was a time where there wasn't another offensive player that was behind him by more than 150 points, but he's 35 years old. He moves to a notorious bottom 10 stadium every year offensively, bottom 10 in the league for offense. Vegas people, there's your little over under play, but every year the Royals stadium is bottom 10 in the league for, offensive output. And like, Royals are arguably going to be one of the worst teams in baseball, right? Maybe bottom 5, bottom 10. And so besides Merrifield and there's a couple other minor pieces, like, I just think that he's a big downgrade. And I know I passed up on him several rounds. And like I said, a lot of us did too. Brian Hayes, I'll kind of move to him. Like, I looked at him hard. I kind of passed on him too. One big thing for me that I read about was that he was ranked top 10 in luck on balls in play. Not last year, the COVID year, but last year. To the point where he was like 450 on balls in play that usually should be caught on the luck factor, which is they call BABIP, which I don't know, I get the thing, but it's kind of funny. So I think he's due for a correction, definitely a big one. And like Santana, the same exact situation. You're in a Pirates team who are within 3.5 wins of Vegas of being the worst team in the league. So for me, I think he would have to do a ton, like an absolute ton, to make up for what's around him. And for me, he was a hard pass. He's going to correct. You kind of, we'll talk about your team in a little bit, but he's someone who you draw a line in the top and from the bottom and you cut it in half, and that's what you're going to get. And then with the production around him, that bothers me too. Polanco, he had really, if you look at him statistically in his reference, he had one really good season, and that was the season with the juice balls. So every offensive player had a great year that year. So, I mean, he's been subpar defensively his entire career. He's been league average offensively outside of that one standout year. And behind him is Royce Lewis. I mean, he would have to play essentially perfect offensively and defensively to hold Royce Lewis down there. And I mean, look, outside of 1 year, I don't see him doing that. So for me, I don't want my second starting shortstop to be a guy who might get pulled by the All-Star break or whatever the new arbitration date is this year, where they let guys on, let guys off, et cetera, for the money standpoint, whatever. Not for me. Aaron Hicks, like I think maybe all of our entire league is Yankees fans, but I'm not telling anybody doesn't know. Is he in a loaded lineup? Yes. Is he hurt every single year? Yes. Can you count on him to start in center field? Every single at bat and bat 220 for the whole season. I mean, that's just not where I want my starting center field to be. 220 hitter who's always hurt, always angry, or always hurt. And bats 220. He's not for me. Does he take walks? Yeah, points league, but I don't know. I would go other ways for my starting center fielder. Yordan Alvarez, he's being labeled as somebody with chronic knee problems. He had double knee surgery last year. He had knee surgery just on a single knee the year before that. I don't know. He's shown a massive skill set. I thought he was drafted way too early. And can you count on him the whole year? Like, I'm not sure you can. Like, that's a lot of knee surgeries. I don't know, man. That's a concern for me. The bench I wrote down as a note, Jimmy's entire bench is either in the minor leagues, in a time split with somebody, or they're only playing DH, which I know doesn't sound like a crazy bad situation, but the fact that you get these first basemen get maybe 150 points more for putouts and stuff like that than any other position, and a lot of the DHs play first. That's usually where most of them end up. Or, you get a second or third baseman who, turns double plays. We get points for that. I guess you could kind of argue that with errors, but I don't know no one's making a crazy amount of errors to completely negate the defensive points. So that's a tough spot to be, where all of your bench guys are essentially relying on really having to be like 300 hitters or really serious power hitters. So that's kind of my take on his offense. Pitching wise, tough. That's bad situation with, out for a season with Clevenger. He's the ace of Jimmy's staff. Obviously we know he's out. And we knew he was out earlier, but he's Jimmy's franchise guy. That's the only spot in our league you cannot waive. And that puts him in a really bad situation on the starting spot. Zach Gallen, who I have in my other dynasty league with my cousins and friends and stuff like that. He's my ace and dynasty guy on that. Fractured forearm, trying to swing. I've said this every single year in every write-up, and people are probably tired of hearing it's repetitive. The two injuries you never want to read about in baseball, especially in fantasy for production, is an oblique injury and a wrist or forearm fracture. They're the three worst possible injuries you get. It automatically depletes these guys. So even if Gallen comes back, that's now would be Jimmy's ace because of the Clevenger injury. That's tough, man. That's a really, really tough person to throw out there as the ace of your staff. And then Severino, to me, that's kind of like a wasted pick. It's been 2 years now. You could scoop him off waivers somewhere around the same exact draft point that you got him in the season. In terms of better outlook or positive things that, where you can prove me wrong, Freddie Freeman, look, can you ever go wrong? Freddie Freeman, reigning MVP, loaded offensively. He's a fantasy stud. Lindor, in my opinion, in a way, way better offensive lineup than the Indians. I mean, I know J Ram's over there. He's been kind of roller coaster a little bit lately the last couple of years. I think last year was a little bit of a down year, or maybe last year he had a good year, and the year before that he was not great, and then the year before that he was a stud. So, and there's really not much else in there. They kind of piece together. So I think Lindor's in a better lineup. You got, with Alonso, McNeil will probably set the table. I know a lot of people are down on JD Davis. I kind of like him. And so there's a lot of guys there. McCann, I've always been a big McCann guy. He's my backup usually every single year in fantasy. I always scoop him up. I know you have him this year. So, I just think he's in a better offense. Although with that being said, that might be the best division in baseball this year. And the Braves staff is loaded. The Nationals on the top end are absolutely loaded. Even the Marlins have a lot of really good young arms. So Phillies top three-ish, questionable Eflin, but the top three-ish are very good. So I don't know, maybe maybe he's down a little bit, but I like him better there. Meadows, I think to 2020 was a fluke year. He had an oblique injury, as I just mentioned. That's something you never want to deal with. I always mention those, wrist, oblique, and forearm, you got to avoid. So I think he has a rebound year, like 445 for him, I think is a crazy, crazy, terrible prediction. And I think he could really right the ship for Jimmy, score maybe 100, 150 more than he's projected to. I think around 600 is a very fair thing for Meadows. Hunter Renfroe, his stats last year were grossly misrepresented. While we just talked about Hayes, who had the BABIP of 450 and being in the top 10 for luck in all of baseball, Renfroe was on the bottom for BABIP in the most unlucky. Goes to Boston. His swing is perfect for the short porch. So he's another one there. What is he at? 285? Like that's a ridiculous number. I mean, 285 is literally like usually most of our backup catchers. So to think that he's only going to score 285 starting in right field for Boston, I think is another guy who's just grossly misrepresented his stats, especially, and his prediction by ESPN there. So that's somebody that could right the ship. And last but not least, he's got Castellanos, who anybody who knows me, I think I will still go down and I'll argue with anybody. I think he's one of the top 10 hitters in all of baseball. I'm not saying he could play defense. I'm not saying he's the greatest defender. A lot like Clint Frazier, great bat, is lost in the outfield. You're not going to get me arguing with you about an outfielder. He's lost at first. He's lost in the outfield. He's not a good defensive player, but he could fucking hit and rake with, am I allowed to curse on Facebook? I don't know. He could hit and he could rake with anybody. So that's a huge pickup. Last but not least for Jimmy, or the two I had is on the pitching end, Ian Anderson, stellar year last year. I know it was a short sample size, probably will regress a little bit in a sophomore slump, but I'd argue that even with how good his numbers were last year and pitched great in the playoffs. So again, this is a guy you draw a line through, and even if it's a little bit higher than that medium, I still think he's top 25, top 30 worthy at the end of the year. And Musgrove, which is, it's crazy to me. I get it. He's receiving though the least hype of anybody that the Padres acquired this year. And that, I think that's a big mistake by anybody who's literally making him like he's a nothing acquisition. He's a good pitcher. I think he's going to have a great year. And he's in a division that's not really all that great. I mean, if you take out the top two teams, like Arizona stinks. And San Francisco, I don't know what they're doing. You keep thinking they're going to rebuild. They don't. They still have a lot of these bums. They're trying to get their youth going. Some of them aren't panning out. But I think he's going to have a really, really good year. And I think it's a mistake by anybody who really, underrated his pitching skills. And I think that's a big win for Jimmy there. So that's kind of my thing on Jimmy. I think that he really got shortchanged with the injuries. And that, really put him in a bad position. And I just think for me, just like last year, my write-up, I think just like last year was the pitching year because of batters being behind. I think this year's a pitching year, and having the, 11 starting pitching staff, the worst, relief pitchers and worst overall staff, to me, kind of puts him at the bottom here. With that being said, though, Jimmy is very, 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 very good on the waiver wire. He's every single year that he's been in the league, I believe he's made the playoffs. Actually, I'm definitely about sure of that. He's won once. He's one of the late joiners. He only joined us 4 or 5 years ago. So, look, I wouldn't be surprised if, he wrote the ship and picked up some guys that, cleaned the way maybe till Severino and Gallen got healthy, but he's 10th for me this year. Pause.
Yeah, so I'll just touch on a couple of things that you said. I'm going to, as requested by the room, I will. They requested that we give out where these owners finished last season. I'm going to pull that.
I think Jimmy won in 2019.
So in 2019, so we won't talk about last year just because last year was a completely different structure. We didn't use any of our keepers. Obviously, as everyone knows, the league in general was in flux, and Jimmy actually came in 4th. Actually, wait, hang on.
Check the playoff bracket. I thought he beat me in the finals, or was that the year before?
So it looks like I had it on 2020. So on in 2019, Jimmy did defeat you for the fantasy championship.
Yeah,
So,
he beat me pretty bad too. So I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if like I said, turned around the team. He just has so many injuries, and I just think this is a year for the staff. But go ahead.
yeah. So just a couple of things I'll touch on that you said that I semi disagree with. I think for a lot of players, you have to sort of throw out last season. Everyone got a late start. There was no spring training. So a lot of guys that, you'll see a lot of season or in a lot of normal years when guys are injured and don't have a spring training, they use those first couple of weeks as their spring training. So they'll start off with maybe only hit a home run or two, and they'll start off with a 200 average, something like that. And then as the summer comes along, they pick it up and they'll hit 350. They hit you remember Mark Teixeira, he was always a notorious, started off super slow, and then the summer came along and he hit 400 through July and August and September. So it's just there's a lot of guys where last year that happened, and then when you're talking about middle of the season, there was only 60 games, so middle of the season ultimately was the end of the season. So I think you have to throw stats out for a lot of guys and really look at their 2019 stats. So one of the guys that you mentioned that I'm gonna disagree with you wholeheartedly is Hunter Renfroe. His stats were awful in 2019 as well. I think that yes, his swing is made for something like for Fenway Park, but his stats overall, his OPS plus against right-handers versus left-handers, he has a sub 100, he has a below average OPS plus against righties, and his OPS plus against lefties is good. But I mean, for a guy that's going to hit for the last 2 seasons has hit below 200, I don't see that at all. I hate that. I hate Jimmy's outfield. We talk about Hicks all the time as Yankee fans. Obviously, love Cody Bellinger. He's a top 10 player in the league. So not from that standpoint, but just from a depth standpoint. Canna, middle of the road guy. Castellanos, bad season last year, but he's a great pure hitter. So outside of Cody and Castellanos, I don't know. I don't really like his outfield at all. I think this is probably the worst outfield in the league. You touched on catcher. He's going to make an acquisition. There's guys like Garver out there, things like that. They'll get scooped up. He'll scoop them up. Freddie Freeman, top 2 or 3 first baseman, top 2 or top 10 player in the league. So that's fine. Santana, Fletcher. I'm just going down the list here. Tommy La Stella, Eugenio. He's great in MLB The Show, but another terrible year last year. And he's going to have to really turn it around because he didn't hit for much average the year before. But he's a big power guy, so he certainly can do that. Brian Hayes, he's a breaking out guy. He can certainly break out, but we spoke about the Pirates. The Pirates are awful. Really do like his shortstop situation. I think that it's one of the better shortstop situations in the league. Not to toot my own horn, but I think I have the best shortstop situation in the league. We'll get to that, but I think this is fairly close to maybe second or third. Really like Lindor. Obviously, that lineup is much improved. He's going to do work this season. I think he's invigorated because he's in a contract year as well, and it doesn't look like that contract is getting done before the season ends. So, I mean, before the season begins. So he's going to have a fire lit up under his ass, and he's going to rake this year. I do really like Polanco because I think that lineup is good. I know it's a pitcher's ballpark, but still really do like him. Still think he's a top 10-ish type talent when it comes to shortstops. And we know that how quickly the shortstop market does fall off. As far as pitchers go, really like Ian Anderson. Don't like Musgrove. Like Pablo Lopez a little bit. I don't know what to think about Corbin. I feel like his stock has just fallen drastically. Really don't know what to make of him at all. Flaherty, really good, but as you spoke about with his starters, his starter situation is just hurt badly by the Clevenger injury. So I definitely put him, this lineup as it is right now, this roster as it is constructed right now, towards the bottom of the food chain. So let's move on.
So give me a number. Bottom of the food chain, what?
Yeah, so I'm going to agree with you as the number 10 ranked player here.
Okay. All right. Number 9. Unfortunately, I have you there, my friend.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right. Pulled up. Pause.
Oh, I got to go to my team.
What are you walking parrot, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
I
All
gotta
right.
change that though. But
What?
I said I gotta change that name. That was from when I had Edwin 2 years
Oh,
ago,
yeah,
and outside of the last year where we did the separate.
You gotta go back to 2021.
Yeah, I know. It's because I have it open on another
Where'd you
screen where I was
Where'd you
looking into.
finish last year?
So in 2019,
19.
I finished ninth.
Okay.
And like I said, that was probably what my second year in the league in 19. So I certainly have learned a lot from then. But yeah, I'm usually not. I haven't been very good on the fantasy baseball front as of yet. So
All right. So I'll start with so I have you as the worst infield, 8th ranked outfield, and worst ranked offense. So which isn't terrible because I still want teams to be on the opposite end. 8th ranked starting pitchers, 9th ranked relief pitchers, 9th ranked pitching staff. That's kind of where it gets you. So to the top, look, Gary Sanchez, can't believe you picked him. There's I don't think there's any player in baseball we hate more than Gary Sanchez, which is so crazy. He's regressed.
I had to do it. That's why right
know.
before I picked him, I text you. You're gonna
I
crack up
just-
with this.
I can't.
know.
You have him and you have Stan, which is unbelievable to me. But he's regressed every single season of his MLB career. He might. I don't know if Cashman would ever actually make the move, but he might lose his starting job by like August. I mean, he basically lost it last year in the playoffs. I don't know. I know he's mashing, but I mean, like, congratulations. It's a bunch of guys who aren't going to be in the league in a week. I don't know, man. I don't like him. I never have. He doesn't hustle. I don't think he puts in the work ethic. I don't want to hear about it. What he's doing in Dominican Republic after he parties against a whole bunch of slow pitch softball guys. Congratulations. Not for me. He's regressed every year, like I said, in the MLB statistically. Voit, tough man. Like, I think he's a little bit of a product of the juice balls. That's what I firmly believe. I do think, yeah, I know he hit more home runs last year, but I thought he was a more pure hitter last year. He did spray the ball a little bit more. I thought you got him in a really good spot. And I don't know, man. Like, they're saying a month just without baseball activity, then 2. Like, are you looking to not be able to have Luke Voit through April and May? That's a tough loss. With that being said, though, like, first base is always in surplus. So you know, I always end up going to grab Mitch Moreland, somebody like that. So replaceable, but I think like 475, that's crazy to me. Luke Voigt's a 550, 575 player at the end of the year. If he's not healthy, maybe even breaches 600. I mean, I think like Freddie Freeman put up like 970 something last year. So if Freddie Freeman's at 970, there's no way Luke Voigt is a 475 player. So that's a big loss. Maybe now he probably finishes at 475, but I liked where you got him in a good spot. Miguel Sanu, people really sneaky thing about Miguel Sanu that I read about is that people don't realize, like, he has the same exit velocity, velo, launch angle, and power as like the likes of Stanton and Judge and that, and he has the same barrel up contact rate as Fernando Tatis. I did not know that. I knew he had a lot of power, did not know those two statistics match. I think you got a steal there. 330, another thing, like, here, like, I don't know what they were looking at to make these, but like 330, he's going to get 125 points alone just playing first base or whatever. And maybe he split some time at DH or whatever, but so you're going to tell me that he's only putting up 215 points all year offensively. That's craziness. Good pick by you, Steele. Herrera, told you, we talked about this earlier, but as you getting him, I think that was big. Moves to first base, like we just mentioned, probably picks up 150, right? So that puts him over the 574-ish range. He's another guy where has a sophomore slump. Why is he getting so much bashing and so much throwback for his sophomore slump last year, when it happens all the time? Like, his career's over, but all these other guys have the sophomore slumps and it's like, oh, it's sophomore slump. Not sure why he's getting the wrath compared to others. Draw a line in the middle. he probably goes over that, draw a line from the epic year, his rookie year, and to disaster last year, put it in the middle. He's probably around a 500. I think that was a very good trade by you. Good move. Garrett Hampson's not ownable. Matt Chapman, who used to be a very pure hitter, was very Josh Donaldson like, has really become like power bust. I don't know, man. I don't really like Chapman all that much. Donaldson, getting older, but keeps producing. His health will be a thing for him. Last year, was it last year I had him, or maybe 2 years ago I had him? I know I dealt him at some point in time. Chris was still in the league then, because that's who I made the deal with. But he's one of those players where everything is straight. Then 2 days he's hurt, he's off, and then he's back, and then and it's like he ends up being something where this league ends up being like a real daily lineup, because you continuously have to monitor like what he's doing. So that's just a little bit concerning. It's something else that I constantly stay on top of, which is obnoxious for, I know a lot of us set our lineup on Sunday and go check the next Sunday, or, check the scores, but don't, so much do alterations. I probably would agree with you. You probably do have the best shortstop tandem. Turner and Story is really legit. There's a peak, I would call it. I know we were talking about the mountain in the intro. I would say shortstop and definitely second base too, like, which is why I think Herrera is a steal, because second base is so depleted. There's just nothing there. And 424 is a steal. He probably ends up finishing top 5 at second. Anyway, I digress. Turner and Story, they're probably at that peak of the shortstops. And then I would say after Story is just a real like fall off to, I mean, look, I'm not saying Didi Gregorius isn't a great player or a good player, but I think the gap from Story, that's kind of where the tiers split, is the Story to Didi, the Story to Jorge Polanco, the Story to who else is there? Kind of like a Nick Ahmed. I guess maybe he's the tier a little bit under that, but you got to get the point. So I would agree with you that you have 2 of the top shortstops on that real first tier there. Outfield, you love Lariano. I had him last year. He had a great year last year, although his second half was brutal. I remember I was trying to trade him in our COVID league. But he's starting to kind of bring the bat around together. Joey Gallo, never really been a fan. Ozuna will continue to clean up, has protection. They have to throw to one of those 2 guys, and it didn't work out for anybody last year throwing to either of them. Teoscar Hernandez, I would never own. Kyle Lewis probably would never own. Stan, again, like, it's like crazy because, Judge, and we'll get to that later, is like 404, stands at 399. And it's like, there's guys I can make an argument for, like Chaoston. I can't make an argument for Stan or Judge because I just don't know if they're going to be healthy. Just like I couldn't make an argument for Hicks. Like, I don't know. Maybe they do only score 399 because they're always out. Especially Stan. I mean, I know he never really played the field anyway, but you are literally only relying on offensive stats. And to me, he's just not big poppy type where that's all you could, but I don't know. I don't know if he's going to stay healthy. Eloy, however we know him as, that's a massive loss for you. That sucks. A lot like Jimmy with Clevenger. Well, I know Clevenger is obviously more important, but when you lose a corner type keeper, especially this early on before we even get started on opening day. I mean, it's like losing somebody week 1 in NFL and is out for the year. That's a big loss for you because he was a nice piece. He was, I believe he was in the early 600s or high 500s. I mean, obviously they adjusted him to where he's at now. James McCann, love the pickup. That's a big move for you that people won't realize, because if Sanchez does end up shitting the bed again and digressing again for whatever this is, the 5th, I don't know, it's been a while, maybe 5th or 6th consecutive season. You have McCann right there to play. I love McCann. I have him every single year. I used to draft him, even though he was splitting time. It was awesome to just go, especially against lefties, scoop him up, throw him in there. I never had to worry about him getting negative. He picked me up 4, picked me up 5. And like I said earlier about Jimmy's catcher, people don't realize that just 4 or 5 equates to 15 points at the end of the week, makes a big difference. So I like, that was a nice pickup by you. And give me a scroll a little bit. Jay Bruce, that's a nice pickup. He will be that as of today, he's going to be playing first base. Not sure what they're going to do with Ford. I guess send him down, but he's going to get first base action. I like I'm not saying he's going to go back to his old ways, but I like the fact that he's a veteran bat. He's a lefty. He should abuse a short porch. I don't know why Cashman continues to say his analytics aren't taking advantage of that, but nice piece to have. I like that pickup by you too, late in the round. And I also saw Jad Chisholm. He got the nod today to start at second base. So I think that 238 again in a league where we talked about how second base is complete fall off, that will end up being an important piece for you because I don't think Garrett Hampson's worth owning, and Jazz can go up and start for you. So I saw that today, actually, before we got on about an hour or two ago, that he got the nod to start at second. So that may be key for you also, which I didn't factor that into the predictions because I did them this morning. So, but that may end up being key. Bring me to your pitchers. So Sonny Gray, like, you know, I don't know, man. Like, he couldn't do anything in New York. He had a great year after the trade, a great year last year. Not as good, but still good. Like, now he's the only ace. He's the guy you got to really kind of worry about, or the only guy you kind of really got to worry about in that rotation. Should have another good year. Nice one. Lamet, I saw he threw, like you mentioned earlier. Nice piece to have. I love his stuff. Just didn't know if he was going to be healthy. And these kind of where my concerns come in. Rue, always hurt. There's always a problem with him. That's why he kind of got away on the cheap from the Dodgers. And then Toronto overpaid for them. Marco Gonzalez, nice piece. Shane Bieber, in my opinion, tied for Cole, DeGrom-ish with the best pitchers in the league. I mean, they're right there, split by 5, 10, 15 points. You're picking hairs. Any of those three of those guys are huge. I don't know what to expect from Talion. He's looked good in the spring, but again, it's the spring. And then Javier. So I agree with you. I know in your opening statement, you said this. You have one of the rotations. I completely agree that could end up being a lot better than what's on paper and might have really the most balance. Like, Talion 357. I think that's probably understating it. I don't know much about Javier, to be honest with you. And then Marco's solid. Rue is solid when he's healthy. Bumgardner, he was really bad last year. I think he was actually dropped and not even picked up in our league. And then Lamet and Gray. So very solid staff, man. Like, I mean, once, you know, anything can turn there, and those would be my positive outlooks. You know, you have a solid team. I have you at 9 right now because it's just there's a lot of, like you mentioned, a lot of, you know, predictability or not predictability, unpredictability, right? Would it be whatever? You get my point. God, give me your take on your own team.
Yeah. So as I alluded to in the beginning, the injuries of Voit and Eloy are huge in terms of my offensive production. I'm higher on Voit than you are. Seems like, you know, you thought that he was a little bit more of like a juiced ball guy. I don't know. He hits the ball hard. So it's, and I know I sound like an idiot. Oh, this guy's in the major leagues. He hits the ball hard. No, but that's a thing. So like it can overcome that exit velo is going to come more in handy with balls that are, you know, not as live as they were in the past couple of seasons. So hitting the ball hard is still going to find gaps and find over the wall. As we know, Yankee Stadium is a big time hitters park. So it just really sucks, man. Of course it happens. The Eloy injury, it didn't really matter because he was a keeper of mine. So I you know, he was on my team no matter what when we put our keepers in a few weeks ago. But Voit, I think the injury literally happened the day after I drafted him. So it's just the way things work out sometimes. I agree with you about my second base situation, but I think the acquisition of Hiura that I made can really come in handy. I think he can end up being a top 5 second baseman this season. But that's why at the end of the draft, I ended up picking up Scope and Jazz, where they could be guys, especially Jazz. I was hoping that he would win the job, and ultimately he did win it yesterday. So yeah, just hoping to be a guy that can look. I'm a big MLB The Show player, so Jazz Chisholm's card in the game is really good, and if he could, I know video games don't translate necessarily to real life production, but in terms of the way that he plays in the game and, making solid contact, the ball does pop off his bat where, if he can translate that somewhat to real life, he could be a nice little piece for me, or maybe even a trade piece for me where, someone who's kind of out of it can can use him in their prospect keeper, things like that, moving down the line where it could be something like that. It's also the reason why I picked up James McCann. I'm hoping that Sanchez can continue what he's doing in the spring and maybe, pop off, have a good month and a half, and then maybe I can swindle somebody into taking him off my hands, because yes, he is one of my most hated players in the league. I don't like him at all from a hitting standpoint, from a person standpoint. I don't know. It's just not, I picked him up more as a prospect and hoping that he does really well and then I can unload him. But I guess now that I'm saying this over a cast where everyone's hearing me, they're going to know my plan. So maybe I shouldn't have said that. But yeah, I love my shortstop situation. I don't think there's another one better in the league. I don't know how much better you could really get at the shortstop situation. So yeah, love that situation. And then as far as my outfield goes, I was just banking on guys that can maybe get back to what they did in 2019, like Joey Gallo. Teoscar actually had a really good year last year, and I think he can continue it. I think that lineup in general in Toronto is a really good one, and I think he'll have protection on both sides of him. And he's going to be playing all over the outfield, so I think I'll get some eligibility and flexibility from that standpoint as well, where he'll become eligible, in either, probably not center field, but definitely left field. So I'll definitely be able to move him around a little bit. I don't know why you don't like Kyle Lewis. He's the reigning AL MVP, rookie of the year. I think he's only going to build on those stats that he had, and just become a better player overall. I think his 394 prediction is definitely low. I think he'll be more in the high fours, low fives. And I think he's going to be a solid pickup for me. I picked him up really late, and I'm actually really excited about that pickup. Stanton, again, another one where I hate the guy from a baseball standpoint, but he's absolutely mashing in the spring. And if he stays healthy, he could be, he could only ultimately turn into a diamond in the rough where, I picked him up sort of in the middle rounds, and he could ultimately be a top five round talent that, so ultimately a big time value for me. And then maybe if he plays the outfield a little bit, I get a little flexibility there, but I doubt that. My bench, otherwise, just guys, again, that I think could ultimately have decent years, have some flexibility with them. And yeah, we'll go from there. And then as you alluded to also with my rotation, Lamet and Sonny Gray aren't making opening day, so I'm at a little bit of a disadvantage there as well. But I think there's a boom or bust quality for me, and I lean more towards the boom side of things. And I have a glass half full mentality with them. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But as far as prediction goes, I had myself in the 7th slot in the league. So yeah, I'm sure we'll probably get to the teams that I had 8th and 9th in probably your 8th or 7th and 8th slot. So, but yeah, I thought that there was a little more boom to my team than what you think. I think certain situations are going to turn out a little bit better than what they are. I mean, obviously I drafted them, so I would think that. So maybe I'm a little bit biased, but yeah, I had myself in the 7th slot.
All right, so that far, I mean, we're pretty close. So thus far. All right, and just, I always give like a little theme to my what I'm doing with, or what the league is. To me this year, I think the theme to the prediction is keepers prevail. That's what I'm going to call it. And as you kind of see, if you understand where that theme's coming from, the first team we went over was Jimmy in 10th, as the Clevenger situation. And then we got to Paz now, who lost Eloy. So as you'll see kind of as this goes along, is that that's my theme for the predictions this year, keepers prevail. And as we keep going, you'll kind of see why that is. So the 9, 8, 7, and 6 teams, in my opinion, are separated by no more than 50 points. The 8, 7, and 6. Yeah, 8, 7, and 6 are separated by like 17 points total. So in 8th, I have my dad's 7-word name. Whenever New Year, COVID, frustrating 22. That's my 8th place team. So pull up his real quick. All right. Appreciate my dad taking over a team here. I know he enjoys being part of this. I know baseball is usually a lot, but after we get to the draft, I think it kind of, slows down. I'll say he did most of this on his own for really. I think I took a reliever and that was it. So, I mean, I think he did a really good job. Like I said, these four teams here are literally separated by 9, 8, 7, and 6. Those four were separated by no more than 50, and 8, 7, and 6 were separated by no more than 17. So, I mean, these could be arranged in any type of way, but I just kind of went with what I came up with. Salvador Perez, good pick, but this is kind of what we talked about yesterday. The Royals being in one of the are going to be one of the worst teams in the league this year. Who else does he really have? We talked about Merrifield and Carlos Santana. Besides that, these three, the one thing I'll say, and this will kind of go for the Cubs too, is that, guys like Perez, guys like Merrifield may be on their way out midway through, which would be very helpful. Guys like Rizzo, Contreras, I think Baez has a decent amount left, but those guys may be on the move, and that will help you substantially fantasy wise halfway through. But some of these guys on these bad teams, like, they have to have such good years to overcome what they're, what's around them, that it's just really hard, because even if they have a great year, they don't get supplemented from a fantasy standpoint. I'm not talking about accolades in regular MLB, but from a fantasy standpoint, it hurts them. And this is, again, with the continuing theme of keepers prevail. My dad unfortunately got stuck with Jesus Aguilar in a franchise spot from a previous owner. He's not an 18th rounder. And I don't know, I guess since he has the first base and DH eligibility, maybe he's ownable, but that hurts having someone like that in the 18th round, and you're kind of stuck with. And there was somebody else too. I know he traded for Conforto and Alonso, so he has both of them as a Mets fan. So those were of his own. But I believe there's someone else, but maybe it was on the pitching end, but neither here nor there. So kind of hamstrung right off the bat, and then keepers prevail. And as you'll see, that really sets you back, especially this year, in my opinion. Paz and I both discussed it earlier, and I don't want to be repetitive, but that just the cliff was so sharp and so steep from that tier. And so if you're a little bit behind on keepers, it really damages you. But Moustakas, I think Dad got him a little bit early there. You really want primary first basemen to be in your primary first base slot because of all the points they pick up for that. Maybe he tosses Aguilar there, but I think Aguilar is no longer be able to be DH, right? So I guess he's got to play first base. So I don't know, maybe he tosses them there, and that flip-flops him and maybe puts Aguilar to a 450, 500-point player, and then he can move Moustakas to second. But Segura is aging. There was a lot of stats in there. I looked at him 3, 4, 5 times and just couldn't put my finger on taking him. Unsure about him. He's getting older. Biggio, I like it. Edmund is another one, like, has a lot of backlog of weird stats. The multiple position eligibility is massive. Third base, shortstop, right field. You'll be able to move him around, do a lot of things. Rendon, we haven't really got to see what Rendon can do in a full season with Trout. Yesterday was shortened, massive signing, 300+ million. So that will be interesting to see what he could do all year. This is the first year that we will see what a full year of production is in that lineup. Ohtani, I mean, look, based on the spring, he looks like he might be back to form and have a really big year. So that top part of the lineup could be very, very dangerous this year. And, if he's on the plus side of what he could do in a full season with those guys, that's a great pick by my dad there right off the bat. I was going more the pitching route. Rendon was there for me if I wanted him. I went, with Scherzer instead, but, it'll be good to see what they're going to do. Bo Bichette, young,
That was a great keeper, pick with my dad. I know he was down to him and Ian Happ and ended up getting Ian Happ in the draft anyway. I know a couple people that were stuck between one or two keepers, ended up redrafting those guys anyway. So I always like when that works out because, you fall in love with some of your guys and then you have to toss them back in and sometimes you don't get them. But when you do, it's pretty sweet. So I'm glad he ended up getting Ian Happ and he ended up getting Bichette, who he was tossing behind, got a Bichette at a pretty good round. Like we had just mentioned with Paz's team, like, man, that clip. So like, there's a prime example. Bichette's projected to score 567. And I think Story was like, right around 590, 580. And then, so right there, Bichette really is probably that last rock on the cliff there before the steep fall off to the Didis and Edmund Ahmads and stuff like that. And I'm sorry, but Bichette's, I love Didi, but Bichette's just a better player and Story is just a better player. And I think that while that tier separation only shows 50 points, I think the eye test would tell you something a lot differently. And I think, to Paz's point and to kind of what we discussed with his team. So that's to me, that's a big spot to have there at a 567. Paul DeJong, I think my dad went for him a little bit too early. There was definitely 2, 3, maybe 4 guys that were probably better than DeJong to be a starting shortstop there that he could have went and got a little bit of a reach. I love Eddie Rosario. Had a tough year last year. He's Eddie Rosario is my dude. I feel like every year I end up getting him. I know the one year I was so friggin' pissed off. I had him and he started off awful. I remember this. I'll never forget this. He was like he started like, it was insane, 2 for 70 or something. It was ridiculous. And I dropped him and Chris picked him up. And I swear the day I dropped him, he went on like an absolute tear. He had dropped like 12 bombs in the month. And I ended up having to go trade friggin' Chris like a fucking 15th or 16th round pick for him. I was so pissed off. I had drafted him like the 30th round and then as a clown, then I ended up having to go pay for a guy that I had friggin' 14 rounds later. Ridiculous. Lorenzo Kane, probably back end of the career. Conforto, Hap, I like both of them. Conforto should have a monster year. I forgot to mention him earlier with the Lindor, Alonso, McNeil table setting, JD Davis. They got Conforto right there. Maybe bat him 4 to split up righty lefty. Another bat there. He should benefit big time from that. Again, though, that division, man, might be the best division in baseball. Tough. Ian Happ. What's crazy about the Cubs is like they have so many decent players and good players, and they just cannot figure it out and get it together. You would think like with the players they have, they'd be able to turn it around. They just haven't. Jock Peterson, my dad probably went and got him because he saw the bottom of the ESPN ticker, just being honest. I could be wrong, but he's got like 8, 9, 10 bombs now. I think I read in the spring. Again, get maybe against slow pitch, softball pitching, but neither here nor there, man. If he continues that into the season, big pickup on my dad. I think my dad reached for Hunter Dozier a little bit, actually way early. I know I got to like the 3rd sheet yesterday when I was looking for an offensive player to fill, and Hunter Dozier was on that sheet. So that was probably a little bit of an early reach. Justin Turner, I love Turner. I try to get him as much as I can. He's always just solid, man. He's just like a solid player. And no matter how old he is, he just puts up points, and that's just what he does. And he's never going to be the best player in your team, but he's never going to be the worst player in your team. And you're never going to be like, do I play him today? Do I not? Do I sit him? And he's hot. He's not. He's just a solid contributor. We mentioned Aguilar, Posey, nice backup to have. Might lose his job at the end of the year for that young kid. I can't think of his name. I don't know. I'm even going to butcher this. Tuatago or whatever. I saw today he's going to bat leadoff for the Rays. So to tell me that the
Tsutsugo.
Rays to Asuga. All right. So to tell me that the leadoff hitter for the Tampa Bay Rays, who somehow figure out to win 90 to 95 games every single year and get into the playoffs, is only going to score 285 points as their leadoff hitter. Mind boggling. Great pickup by my dad there. That was super, super late too. I believe that was in the late 30s. So that's a big time pick. 3 position eligibility, massive in fantasy baseball. And not just that, like throw him in DH. He's got an infield spot and an outfield spot. Super, super rare. That's like Merrifield style. And he's got Edmund for that too. So 1 second. It's my little Duke going to bed. All right, then we get to I mentioned Turner, Aguilar, Posey, and Carteret. I mean, yeah, nice bench player. I like him. Go ahead, give me a scroll pause. Strasburg, tough, man. My dad and I went back and forth with this. Third round, maybe too high for him, but I think he's another guy that we kind of mentioned with Paz's team is getting just highly degraded to, he should be better. He should be getting a better perception, better stats. I think he's going to be fine, maybe a little high in third round, but it doesn't really matter now. It's over. There's really was nothing left by the time the third round pitching wise. So probably a good spot. Barrios, great. And ace. Soroka. This is a really great pick and so underrated. They're giving him a 433. The Braves coach just said that he may be in the opening day rotation. So, I mean, with the Achilles, like crazy. So to be only 433, I think that's absurd. And that's a great pick by dad. I know he said he was going to take a shot on them. And they said, they've been talking about like May, but it looks like he might be in this opening day rotation. If that's the case, that's a steal because he's an ace. So that would give my dad 3 aces there, which would be huge. And that would be a massive turnaround. Keuchel, solid. He had a good year last year. He's just another solid guy. Lizardo coming into his own. Division stinks. He should be good. Griffin Canning, don't know much about him. Can't really talk about him. Casey Miz, like the pickup as a prospect. He was having a little bit of location issues, but he's number 1 overall pick. He's been a highly top 5 prospect for a really long time. Should be good. And John Means, I looked at him for a really, really long time. I was between him and I want to give this Peralta guy a try, but good pickup by dad. And he did a good job with the bullpen. Pomeranz and Rogers and Diekman and Pagan. That's great. Where do I have him here? Let's see. So I have him as he's got the 5th best infield, the 4th best outfield, and the 4th overall best offense. But the starting pitching due to Soroka and him taking some shots on Means and Miz, he unfortunately puts him at the last in starting pitching. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5th best relievers overall, 8th best pitching. And that's kind of why I put him 8th. Again, we're sticking to this pitching thing. And, but they're like a lot like Paz, like if Soroka ends up joining this rotation earlier than expected, that's 3 aces right there. And that will be huge this year. So, I think dad did a really good job this year, much better than, previous years. I know it gets a little hectic with the slow roll and just texting and shit and tons, but I think he did a good job, like the squad. And like I said, these next 3 teams here are all interchangeable. So, I mean, we're talking the difference between I think 5 and then the final one was 17. So you're talking about a 17-point swing puts you in the last playoff spot. So not a bad spot to be. Pause.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add. I think the hitting front is a little rough in certain spots. I do expect Alonso to have a nice bounce back year. It's actually kind of nice that because of, I'm not sure how ESPN is going to handle these NL DHs, if they're going to just completely wipe them out or whatever it might be, because as we know, the universal DH for some odd reason was voted down this season. But if anyone knows me, they know that I think the fact that the National League does not have a DH is completely ridiculous. It's literally the only level of baseball that does not have a DH, from Little League up to the major leagues. There's one level of baseball or one league of baseball that does not have a DH, and that is the National League in Major League Baseball. I think it's absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, that's for another rant. If anyone knows Rhino and myself also, they know that we had a show in the past, which has been a couple of years now, but we did a show called Uncut Sports Talk. So that would be a place where we'd get off on these rants, and that would be a rant that I would certainly get off on in those previous times. So, but yeah, I don't know how ESPN is going to handle them. Like if Alonso is going to be able to have DH eligibility the entire season, same thing with like Justin Turner, and the same thing with Aguiar. That DH spot sometimes can, you can get those first base points while, they're playing first base every day, but you have them in that DH spot. So it can really help your weekly scores out and overall scores. But, ultimately the outfield is pretty weak. Outside of Conforto, you have guys that are high strikeout, low contact, low power guys. So, from that standpoint, I'm not really a big fan. Shortstop Bichette, I actually did not realize what type of numbers Bo Bichette has put up last year, and is ultimately what he's being projected to put up. He's being projected to basically be like the number 2 or 3 shortstop in the league in terms of hitting. So yeah, great pickup to have him in the 7th round as a keeper. I think if this was a redraft league, Bichette would have gone higher than the 7th round. And I think if he lives up to what people are projecting him to do this year, he's probably a borderline top 1st round draft pick next season. So to have him, be your cornerstone, sort of go from your prospect keeper to your franchise keeper, and have him on your roster for the next 5, 6, 7 years, whatever it might be. In that 7th round, that's going to present a huge amount of value for your dad. Rendon, again, just a pure hitter, great hitter. If not the number 1 third baseman, 2nd or 3rd, definitely top 3. Kevin Biggio, he's a guy that I'm not very high on him. I feel like he's just like a solid player. I guess from what we were talking about, where the second baseman sort of fall off the cliff. I guess he's a nice little piece, but overall, I'm not a big fan. Segura, not a big fan at all. Moustakas, like him, he's a power guy, and in that bandbox in Cincinnati, he should do well. But yeah, I think the outfield is really where your father's detriment is going to be with his offense. I don't see many high level guys or high upside guys outside of Conforto in that outfield. So he's definitely gonna have to make some moves throughout the season. And I kind of have him in that 9th spot. And again, same thing with pitching. I feel like he's very similar to me, where he could, especially if Soroka comes back as soon as they're projecting, this number 433 immediately goes to at least about 580. So add another 150 to that, to possibly 200, to the low 600. So yeah, that could ultimately be, he could ultimately have 3 guys in the low 600s, low to high 600s, and then guys like Luzardo. And if Casey Mize lives up to anything like they're projecting him to live up to, your dad can have a very solid rotation, and can absolutely be above that, 7th, 6th spot that where you're saying everyone sort of falls into. There's only a couple points here or there that separating teams. He could certainly overtake them and make a push for the playoffs. But ultimately, myself, I had him in the 9th slot.
Yeah, I agree there. I mean, crazy too. Like that Soroka addition, if he comes back earlier than expected, could actually propel him to like a playoff spot. Let's talk about having 3 aces for the whole year instead of having 2. Makes a big difference.
For sure.
All right. So yeah, basically both in agreement there. 7th, it's got Cali Love, Mike. I got that Cali Love. So again, this is is something we mentioned earlier, and the theme for me for writing the prediction this year was keeper prevail. And unfortunately for Mike, has Sale in his franchise spot. Sale's out for the year. And not only that, is that was a 1st round keeper. So that's like a massive blow. You're talking about at minimum, let's see, Scherzer was projected at 787, I believe, or whatever. Let's just call it 750. That's a 750 point swing. So let's just say, for example, like right now, so if he has those 750 points in a 1st round pick, that basically puts Mike, for me, into 2nd or 3rd. So that's how big of the swing is for having Sale in the 1st round and having a keeper like that. And that's why I keep emphasizing this keepers prevail. So big loss. Will Smith, like it a lot. Have him in my other dynasty league. Good pick. Hosmer, to me, he will probably do better than the 458 just because that lineup is just absolutely loaded. Christian Walker picked too early, not somebody I want as my 2nd first baseman, but again, first baseman surplus. Colton Wong, I think he just needed a new place, to be honest with you. And he should be better there. Just real quick, I'll run this too. Mike, I have the 6th best infield, the 7th or 6th rated infield, 7th rated outfield, and 8th overall rated offense. And then I have him ranked 7th for starters, 4th for relievers and 6th overall pitching staff, which puts him in this 7th spot. So back to it, Villar, like Villar is 2nd, 3rd fiddle for the Mets. So I guess that there has to be a move there. I know Mike loves Villar. He goes after him every year. He was a keeper, and I think he paid to cut him. But like he's just not. Villar is not an ownable player in fantasy baseball at all. So for him to be the starting second baseman obviously weighs down Mike's infield a ton in the rankings. Devers probably second best. Maybe I don't know. But let's so top three third baseman all baseball. Riley in a great lineup. Should produce there. 377's ultra low. Bogarts. See, I'm just not a Bogarts guy. And see, like these are two shortstops here where you look at them on paper, you're like, oh man, he's got Bogarts and Torres. I'll take 2 minutes here, and I'm sorry if people are getting annoyed, but Bogarts literally, if you go look at his splits, Paz and I did it for like one night last year. He abuses Fenway Park to the biggest degree in the whole world and does nothing away. And or I shouldn't say last year Paz and I did it. It was the year before when there was actually a full season, because we were just laughing about he gets blown on every ESPN podcast or ESPN broadcast over and over, and the Yankees always play Boston on Sunday night ESPN baseball. He did nothing. We looked it up. He did nothing the whole year in 2019 away, and he was just murdering Fenway. And that's the type of player he is. The swing, he's always fucking hitting the balls off the degree monster. I just don't think he's that great of a shortstop. And I know at the time, I don't know when Paz and I were looking at that. I feel like Duke was born, and I was probably whispering. That's how when I was doing a lot of texting, Dominique or I were always in bed like the first 4 months that Duke was born. So it was probably one of those times. So somewhere between August, September, which is a pretty decent sample size. So that was 2019, not my type of player. I like guys that are consistently going to do things home and away. And Gleyber Torres, I made a side bet with Paz and my cousin, and we ended up having the COVID season. But the year he hit 30 or 40, he will never do that again. He's uppercut swings. He cannot play shortstop. His mind is all messed up at the plate because of shortstop. People could say he was out of shape, he was overweight, all they want last year. He has a body build of a third baseman or a second baseman, nothing more, nothing less. And he's so scared shitless at shortstop and makes so many bad plays that is affecting his hitting drastically. And I don't like these two at all as a duo. I will take Paz's 2. I will take my dad's 2. I don't even know who my 2 shortstops are, but I would take a lot of these 2 over 2 guys on paper that people think are great. Can you just go back up a little bit? So that's the shortstops. Like the outfield, Nimmo is trash. Randall Grechik is trash. Kepler is, I don't know. He goes in a week where he's God's gift to the world, and then he's trash. Aaron Judge, one of the best players in baseball if he stays healthy. 404. I can't argue it. He's a guy I can't argue. George Springer, I saw, is probably going to start on the IL. He should have a top 10 fantasy year in that Toronto lineup. There's no excuse. Toronto should have the best offense in all of baseball next year. Now, will they? I don't know. They should. And Springer should be the cornerstone of that. Now he's starting hurt. Aruzzi, however you say his last name, I don't care. Randy
Rosarena.
Yeah, Rosarena. So McIndoe asked me a couple of times. He texted me. He's like, "Man, why is this guy still here?" He really did nothing in the regular season. Blew up in the crazy playoff run where he batted like 500. Got in some trouble when he went back home because he thought he was awesome, and he sat around. And he's just not for me. I need to see a full sample size. Give me a full year. If Mike is on the right side of that, good for him. He got a steal because he got him late, and he was one of those guys, just like Carlos Santana, that sat there for a lot longer than people expected, but not for me. For Emil Reyes, not somebody I want to be my DH and have to stick there every day. And I don't like his bench at all. Mike's bench. To the pitching, as mentioned, Mike gets hit with the Chris Sale. That's huge. Paddock is good. I saw Sixto Sanchez getting sent down to the minors today. That's a big loss. He's projected at 521. There's no way he's going to, throw 521 points if he's not even going to start in the MLB this year. I don't know if they're going to try and hold him to arbitration, but that's a big deal. Lance Lynn, how is Lance Lynn the 12th best starting pitcher in all of baseball and for fantasy this year? Crazy. I don't know. 696 is an insane amount. Otani's look good on the thing. everything. That will be huge. Woodruff is great value. I think Kluber, he's 50-50, and I love Herman. Not for the person he is, shitty for the things he did, but I picked him up in my other dynasty league. I think he's going to have a big year. So, this is another team here where, like, again, you look at this rotation, like, Paddock is a nice piece. Sixto Sanchez would have been there if he was in the MLB. Lance Lynn is a very nice piece. Otani's a nice piece. Woodruff's a nice piece. Kluber could be a great piece. Herman's a nice piece. Like, this rotation could be great. It also could be awful if Herman doesn't return to what he was throwing before he got in trouble. If Kluber, gets hurt again, I know what the one injury was a fluke. The other one was not. If Otani digresses to what he threw, Lance Lynn just sticks to whatever, and they hold Sixto down there till mid-July, then now we're a different story. Mike's way down the thing. So, this is a tough, like I said, we're splitting hairs with these set of 4 teams here. I think we're at number 7 now. And that's kind of my thoughts on Mike's team. Has potential to definitely grow, definitely hurt by the theme of this where keepers prevail with the Chris Sale pick. That's a 700-point swing. As I said, if Mike was able to get a first round pick, he's the third or fourth team in the league, maybe even second team in the league. But that 700-point swing is massive. Pause.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how you like this team better than mine, but the outfield, I actually really do like his outfield. I think he probably has one of the better outfield situations in the league. But as far as catcher goes, Will Smith is good, solid. Definitely probably in that top 5 conversation, things like that. First base situation, really don't like. I love Eric Hosmer, the player, and the person, and the American, what he did in that World Baseball Classic. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like he's on the downside of his career. I know that offense is probably going to rake this year, but just not really for me. Second base situation, I kind of like Colton Wong as a player, not necessarily as a fantasy player. Not a big fan of the third base situation. I like Devers, but I think he's one of those guys that got really, really hyped up, and he's not really living up to those expectations. I want to see it. I need to see it again from him.
He's also another guy that has no help, which I forgot to
right,
mention.
exactly.
Another team, no
exactly.
help.
Right. The Red Sox aren't going to be a very good team this year. I know they're banking on guys like Bobby Dalbec and JD Martinez and things like that, and Xander Bogaerts. But you spoke about Bogaerts. Not really a huge fan of him either. Glaber, I think he's going to have a very nice season this year. He's probably not gonna ever hit 35 home runs again, like you said, but especially now that they're deadening the balls a little bit. But I still think he's a top 5 hitting shortstop in the league. I think he's still 23 years old, 22 years old. He's going to grow. He's going to mature. It would take the playing shortstop out of it. On the defensive side, I still think he's going to be a stud from a hitting standpoint. And if he's going to turn it around, he's going to progress. And he's going to be, a stalwart in the Yankees lineup, hopefully for 10, 12 years to come. As I alluded to, I really do like the outfield situation. I think Nimmo is going to have a decent year this year. That Toronto outfield is stacked. Lineup in general is stacked. I think Grichuk can have a nice solid year. I don't know how their outfield situation is going to play out because they do have a lot of guys. They have 4 or 5 guys for 3 slots. So we'll have to see how obviously Springer's playing center field. There's no doubt about that. But then they have, depending on where Biggio goes, depending on where Grichuk goes, depending on where Teoscar Hernandez goes, they're gonna have to fit a lot of pieces into that outfield. And it's just gonna have to play out whether guys are only going to be playing 3 or 4 times a week instead of the 6 or 7 times a week. Or I'm not sure what they're doing with the schedule this year, but in general, the everyday guy to the sort of platoon type guy. Kepler, really down year last year. But a guy that's shown promise and that has really shown, to be that he can be a really good guy at the top of a powerful offense. And I think the Twins are going to be good again this year. I know that's not saying much, but their offense really should turn back around. and I think he'll have a very good year. Judge, again, like you said, top 10 player in baseball if he stays healthy, but that question mark is always there because he hasn't shown the ability to do so. So we'll see what happens with him. I have high hopes for him this year. I don't know if that's just the Yankee fan in me or if that's the analytic side in me, but I think Judge is going to have a really solid season. So projecting him for 404, as far as the ESPN projection goes, I think is really low. I think he'll have at least 100 to 150 more points than that. But yeah, as far as Rosarena goes, you have to show that to me again, and I am not convinced in the least bit about him. He blew up on the scene for literally 3 or 4 weeks during the playoffs. I don't know how 3 or 4 weeks in the playoffs then projects you to have a higher projection on ESPN than Aaron Judge. I'm not sure how that works, but whatever. Just prove it to me. But I think he's one of those flash in the pan type guys. Like I think he's sort of making a parallel to what Yasiel Puig did. And yes, Puig did have a nice rookie plus type season, but he's Yasiel Puig 2.0 to me. You're going to have to prove it to me. And as you guys know, Yasiel Puig isn't in the league any longer. So, we'll see what happens. Franmil Reyes, I actually commented to you outside of the draft chat. I asked why he was still around when he was. I think he got drafted in like I'll pull it up right here. I have the draft board. He got drafted in the 34th round. So that's pick number 340 plus. He's not a 340 plus player. He should have been drafted in the early to mid 20s. So from a value standpoint, I think Mike did get a nice value with him, but still not a guy that I love. And then his bench is literally just banking on Jared Walsh having a continuation of what he did towards the end of last season. Bobby Dalbec, a highly sort of touted rookie. What is he going to do this year? Leody Taveras, we're, like I said, we have deep benches, so he can be owned, but he's really not starting material. Dalton Varsho, a highly rated prospect. We'll see what happens with him, but you really can't bank on much with him. Nico Horner, he's unownable. Ahmed Rosario, with the way that shortstop falls off the cliff, obviously ownable, but really sort of in that second or third tier type shortstop bunch. As far as starters go, Sixto is a big loss. Obviously, Chris Sale is a huge loss. Otani, great. Brandon Woodruff, really, really like. Odorizzi, I think a little bit more than you do, but still not sold on him by any means. Kluber, I don't know, man. When you have guys with shoulder issues, they're always an issue moving forward. I want Corey Kluber to work out because I'm a Yankee fan, just like I want Herman to work out. But as far as the Yankees rotation goes, they're banking on 3 guys that threw a total combined 2 innings last season. With Herman and Kluber being obviously 2 of those guys. I have the other one in Tyon, but having 2 of those 3 is really tough to really bank on. I think Herman will probably outscore the 381 that's listed here. Obviously, with the fact that they decided to send down Davey, that means that Herman secured that 5th starter role, so he will be involved, right from the start. But the Yankees have said that they're going to get Davey involved a lot in the rotation. So I don't know if that means that since Herman didn't pitch at all last year, that he's going to be on an innings count, or if it's going to be that Kluber's on the innings count because they want him to be available for the playoffs. And I've seen what he's done in the past where his arm is just shot at the end of the year. I don't know, but it still makes me, it's still nerve-wracking from a fantasy owner standpoint to have both of those guys there. I'm not a big fan of this rotation, especially with the loss of Sixto. I thought Sixto could ultimately be like a top 20 type guy, but if he's starting in the minors, even if he misses 5, 6 starts in the rotation, that knocks him automatically down from a top 20 guy to a top 50-ish type guy. So really big loss there. Obviously, the big loss with Sale. I had this lineup in the eighth slot in terms of rankings. And as far as where Mike finished last season or in 2019, he finished in the 7th slot.
Okay. All right. Next up for me is Bobby, Aces Wild, number 6. And again, these actually it was 5 straight teams. So these 3 now, 6th, 5th, and 4th are separated by 40 and 35-ish for me. So 6th, Bob. So I got Bobby 7th ranked infield, 5th ranked outfield, 9th overall ranked offense. Starting pitching, 6th ranked starting pitching, number 1 ranked relievers, and 3 overall pitching staff. JT Realmuto, best catcher in the game, although I do think Will Smith is going to compete with him for that spot this year. But with that being said, I think Bobby got him too early. Nice to have, but a little bit too early. And I think that brought a little bit of effect to the rest of his offense. Like Muncy, good. Joey Votto, just to me is not a starting first baseman for a fantasy team at this point in time in his career. He's digressed a lot. Very questionable. Ozzie Albies, probably the best second baseman in the game. That's a good pick there. I think he picked him pretty much like right on par too. I don't think that was anything like crazy, right where he should have been picked. And again, that's just a loaded lineup. It's just, you have to wonder, like, it's a loaded pitching division, man. Cesar Hernandez, nice little piece, does his thing. Another one of the guys that I always try to gather. I have him most of the years. I know O'Rourke always says, oh, there's Olsen's guy between him and Eduardo Escobar. I feel like I get them every single year. I know I have Eduardo again this year, but nice little piece. He'll do his thing. Jan Mancado, good. Candelario, like, here's another thing. Like, he had a heater last year, was like, had to be a must own for everybody. And then he completely fell off. I like the first base, third base eligibility, because that gives, you got a nice power hitter in the third base spot. But my problem with him is just like, again, there's just nobody there. Like, are you going to tell me he's protected by Miguel Cabrera? Like, I don't know, man. I just, not really for me. Alberto Mondesi is good. I also think that was pretty a little bit too early of a pick, I believe. Carlos Correa, I don't see anything with Houston anymore. Their fire starter is gone. He's in Toronto. Altuve was terrible last year. I don't see him getting any better this year. I don't care if he's leading off or not. I think they were produced by the cheating, and I just don't see any change there. Not for me. So this is probably, what did I say this infield was at? Like 7th. That's about right. I'm not really thrilled with it. Yasker Mensky took a fastball off the wrist today. That would be a massive, massive loss for Bobby. That's a keeper, a steal of a keeper, where he has him. If he's out for a little bit of time, I know the initial thing was a bone bruise, but you got to wait till the swelling goes down before you see if anything is more serious. That would be a massive loss. Will Myers, not ownable in my opinion. I don't care how good that lineup's going to be. Michael Brantley will be a steal for Bob until Bob has to throw him back into the draft. Left field DH. I wish the Yankees went up and got him. I know I don't really like that lineup as much, and I don't, but I mean, Brantley will still put up, what is that, 539? Still, he'll be right around 539. He's always a nice cornerstone piece to have on the offense. Robles, I don't know what to think about. I know he was always touted as a defensive star, but he had a bat his entire career, and then he gets to the majors and he has not been able to hit at all. He's constantly batting 9th. He's barely turning it over there. He's been really an instant out. And his elite defensive play has really saved him. It sucks because that was a real steal and a great keeper for Bob. For anybody watching that doesn't know, these are, the prospect guys, and we get two prospect guys, a pitcher and a batter, and that's Bob's 35th round pick. So I mean, most 35 rounders are 290 to 330 point players, and this should have been a steal for Bob, and Robles should really be a 600, 500, 600 point player every single year in the 35th round. That's like Soriano has with Tatis that late, but Robles has not turned into that player, and it's just hard to see him just suddenly doing so. And like I said, that is a pitching gauntlet. There's no other way to describe it. You have to be an elite offense, and that's why I tout the Braves every year, because that is a gauntlet division to go through. Jackie Riley Jr. has been hurt all of spring. He's going to be behind. I know he's playing a little bit now, but he's basically will be a wash the entire first month of the season until he catches up to speed. JD Martinez, no help. We've mentioned Boston a million times. Clint Frazier, I mean, look, that's a great piece to have and a good pick by Bob, but like, well, I don't know what Cashman's ever going to do with him. He hates Frazier. He hates Andujar. Is like Gardner really going to continue to steal at bats from Frazier now? It's getting ridiculous. I mean, Gardner's done. He's washed. So, I mean, if he was on any other team, I'd say great stuff for Bob. Clint Frazier's going to do good stuff, but like, we continue to give Gardner at bats over Frazier, and it's mind boggling. So I don't know, but he could end up being a nice piece for Bob. Sit down Myers or replacement. Benintendi, again, Kansas City, they have nobody. And he struggled in Boston with a lineup before the trades of Betts, before the trades of everyone else. So, I don't know, man. Tough. The bench, I like JD Davis. I know people are hating on me for that. I think it's a nice little piece. He's going to provide power. That lineup is really good, man. And as Bob always does, he snags a couple nice prospects, and those are definitely prospect. Both of those two are in the top 10. Via the MLB, and should probably produce this year. So, maybe Bob can replace Robles with one of those guys and kind of get out of that contract, even though, like I said earlier, if I had Robles back when Bob got him, I would have been stoked too, to have a guy like that in the 35th round. And unfortunately, it just doesn't pan out. And it happens sometimes. The prospect thing is a lot of luck. And, Bob's been on the unlucky end of that, unfortunately. To the staff, so we got Darvish, awesome. I tried to peel Darvish from Bob forever, and I just couldn't. He, couldn't budge. Understandably so. Good keeper. He's going to be top 10 pitcher this year. Nola, top 10 pitcher. I have him in my other dynasty. I love Montas. I understand the steroid thing. I still thought he was good last year. Very nice. Kenta Mahida had a huge year last year. Does he repeat it? If he does, big plus for Bob. If he doesn't, questionable. Julio, like, can he ever throw more than 5 innings effectively? Don't know. Big question mark. 481 pins him probably where he is. And this is kind of where the downfall starts, like James Paxton, like just like Julio. So Julio throws great 5 innings, but gets a win rarely because he can't stay in the games. James Paxton always hurt. So you get a 500 year out of him, but that's it. Then you're scrambling to try to, pick up the pieces to replace him. Tristan McKenzie should be great. Could be a steal for Bob. Aguardo starting on the DL. So there's things he needs, he could do here to replace him. Obviously, he has the best bullpen in the league. I'm not a bullpen guy, so I'm not going to rank him up, but Hader's a monster beast. Hader's going to outscore probably my worst starting pitcher this year. I mean, that's insanity. Although I did see that they were going to try and not have him throw multiple innings this year, but that's all hearsay until it happens. Rosenthal, great. Presley's good. And Jansen should have a rebound year. So I have Bob at 6, the number 6 seed to head into the playoffs. Just the back end of the rotation is really rough for me, and there's just the pieces on the offense, like the outfield, is really leaves a lot to be desired, especially if Yaz has to miss any time. Pause.
Yeah, I'm not going to take too much time here, but I like this team better than you do. I really like the infield situation. I think it's probably look, we're obviously banking that Jeimer or Heimer, however he says his name, Candelario, that he has a little bit of a reprise of last season, but I really like this infield. I think hitting is solid from that standpoint. And then obviously if Yastrzemski does have a broken hand / wrist, That's just going to, yes, he's obviously going to miss 2 months or 3 months or 10 weeks, but just the rehab to get back and get his swing fully back, that will basically be a total lost season for Yastrzemski. So that could sway my opinion on this team. But as of right now, I think Frazier is actually going to have a really good season this year. I know we're waiting to see what Kelnick actually does, whether how much he plays, but he, I believe, is the number one ranked prospect in all of baseball. So if he's not number one, he's number two or three. So obviously, really high hopes for him. Met fans in this chat are probably, or watching this video, are probably very mad at the giving up of him for the Edwin Diaz and Robinson Cano deal. But yeah, I mean, all accounts say that he's going to turn into a stud. So yeah, that could ultimately fill in nicely for that Yastrzemski loss if it happens. And I actually like Benintendi a little bit as a player. Yeah, I hated him when he was on the Red Sox because he's a little asshole. But I think as a player, I think he could have a nice little bounce back season. I know we're not expecting KC to have very good of a year, but yeah, I think it'd just be a nice solid player for Bobby. And yeah, I think this team is really good. I like it better than you do. I think this rotation, I think you have three studs. I think you have in Darvish, Nola, and Maeda. I think you have the ability to have a fourth top line starter if Paxton could just stay healthy. I don't think New York was the right fit for him. I think mentally he was not all there when he in New York here. So I think getting back to Seattle, where he did have his great year and his other solid season, I think will be a big help for him. So yeah, I think he's going to be a borderline ace again this season. McKenzie, there's a lot of hype there. There's a lot of ability there. So we'll see what happens with that. And Eduardo Rodriguez, obviously an unfortunate situation with him last year. He had COVID and then he had that heart inflammation. What is it, myocarditis or whatever? So yeah, I hope he, just from a health standpoint, I hope he's healthy. Obviously, I hope every time he plays the Yankees, we shell him. But another guy that could very easily be a top end starter. So yeah, I liked it. And bullpen wise, I really like his bullpen as well. I know Jensen's not the same guy that he was a couple of years ago, but I mean, he's still going to be coming in, and even if he's not closing games, he's going to be in important situations. He's going to be in there often. So, again, another guy with health concerns, both from a heart standpoint and from other standpoints. But I mean, if this bullpen stays healthy all season, I think this is the best bullpen that we have in the league. So yeah, I actually had Bobby. I couldn't decide where I wanted to put him in terms of third or fourth, but I kind of I see him as vying for one of those buys and definitely being solidly in the playoff contention and playoff conversation. So I ultimately went with fourth, but he was very borderline to that third slot for me.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm with you. Like I said, these between my dad, Mike, Bobby, Mac, Soriano, all very separated by minor amounts. So I'm with you, man. All right. To number 5, McIndoe, whose name Private Nipple Shot, definitely the best name in this league. He has a funny one in the fantasy football league too, up a ton with Kate Upton. But first and foremost, look, man, I know we all appreciate having Mac in the league. He's not, the biggest baseball fan, loves the Mets, but he makes the league better, man. He's funny, and we all enjoy his side comments and banter. So I thank him for that. I begged him for I don't even know how many years, so many years, to come in, and he just said baseball was too much, which understandably so. It is a lot. Baseball is definitely a lot. So I'm thankful that he finally got in and he gets to banter with the boys and in our group chat. Fun fact, the first year that McIndoe joined the league, after I begged him all the time, he actually beat me in the championship. So I've been failing a lot lately, man. I know Jimmy handed me a loss by a decent amount. That it was over before Sunday even came in 2019. And I think Mac probably would have joined in 2017. So I gotta get a win there. Did I get a win in 2018? I don't think so. I know there was a little bit of time frame where I was barely sliding in.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I think
neither here nor there.
19. I think 19 was 19 my first season, or was 18 my first season? 18 might have been my first season. But yeah, I don't think
So
I'm
if
pretty sure you
18 was your
lost in the
first
finals in
season, that
18.
was the year that I made the trade to, and I gave you Bieber and Andujar so I could win. So that would make sense. I won in 18. Mac beat me in 17 and Jimmy beat me in 19.
Right. Yep. That's exactly it. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, so first time in, Max, paid for his entry fees for the next 10 years. So now he has no excuse to go anywhere. So, all right. Again, like, a lot like my dad, like McIndoe usually reaches out for tips, but he did a lot of this on his own. Most of the texting I got from McIndoe was, do you agree or thoughts on? And he went with those players, kind of what I talked about earlier, keepers prevail. He's even as high as 5 with the keeper situation, but like Lucchesi gets traded to the Mets, which he'll fill in for the 4-5 area now, but when Syndergaard comes back and they decide what they're going to do, Lugo, etc., like he may be on the outs of that. So that's a big prospect hit, although 18th round, but still to have a starter at 344. I mean, ultimately, I guess he could drop him at some point in time for $25 or $50 or whatever to go to the pot. But that's a rough start. Luis Arraz, his other prospect guy, was elite for me. Actually, for 2 years, we made that deal, and the deal didn't pan out for me. I got Matthew Boyd out of that. Matthew Boyd, actually, another fun fact. Mac and I just talked about that. I traded Arraz. I always do this. I always have these great prospects. I traded you Bieber Andujar. I had Arraz, Lucchesi, and someone else traded for Matthew Boyd. Matthew Boyd scored me negative 21.7 the entire second half of the season when I acquired him. Just a fun fact. So clearly did nothing for me in the rest of the season and into the playoffs. And but anyway, so Matt got Araz as a prospect and Lucchesi as a prospect after that. And Araz just fell off last year. I think 421 is a little crazy. He should be in a rebound, but those two keepers there go with the theme of keepers prevail. So Darno, love it. I used to use Darno McCann combination for many, many years, definitely last year too. So he'll do great in that lineup. Is Lee Goldsmith is good to have at first base. Dominic Smith, I know that was a Mets pick. I'm not really big on Dom. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with him. He's not an outfielder, but you can't bench Alonso, can't play first. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with him. But Brandon Lowe, here's the guy that we were talking about earlier, where you throw a guy back in the draft that you're between keeping, and he went with Seager over Lowe. Can't go wrong there. Seager, arguably one of the top, if not the top shortstop, top 3 shortstops in the entire league, and then gets Lowe back later. So awesome. I like Lowe as a player. I know he went in that sluggish slump and that lasted the end of the season, end of the playoffs. He'll be fine this year. 496 is too low. Also has the dual edge ability that I love. The infield outfield combo is huge. Laraz, we touched on J-Ram. I know people are like, oh, roller coaster. He's my keeper in another dynasty league. J-Ram will be fine. He produces regardless. Bregman, unfortunately, keeps producing, even though all the cheater stuff. And Seager is huge. Andres Jimenez, a Mets pick, not really high on him. He'll have to go get somebody to probably replace Jimenez. You can't have a shortstop only projected to score 400 points. Just raw numbers, Mac. I think he has the second best infield in the league, the ninth ranked outfield, overall 6th ranked offense, 4th ranked starting pitchers, 4th ranked 7th ranked relievers, giving him the 7th ranked overall staff. So really has to lean on this offense, and in a year where I say you can't lean on it, the outfield's really bad. Pollock, not great. I mean, I guess it's the Dodgers offense, but not for me. Hayes is good, but he's got no help. Eaton is shot. McCutchen, he's a nice bench piece, not a starter. Frazier, no. Dickerson, no. Nelson Cruz probably will produce again, but you stuck him in the DH spot. You can't do anything. You can't mix and match. I love having 3-4 options to mix and match there. Ride who's hot. I love the Adley Rutschman pick, the prospect from Baltimore. That kid is going to be a stud, and ranked a 2 prospect in all of baseball. super late. I 33rd rounder for Max, somewhere around there, 32, between 32 and 34. Things were kind of going haywire towards the end of the draft. So it was somewhere around there. And that's going to be huge for him. Definitely can get out of Raz. I think Adley is a 2022 projection. So, I mean, he might have him in the 33rd round for the rest of his career, which a catcher, they're hard to come by, man. But, give me the staff pause. And this is, a little bit where it takes a turn. As we mentioned, Lucchesi, Kershaw, good. They talk about skipping him, giving May, Gonsolin and stuff like spot starts to keep Kershaw healthy. That's a little bit concerned, but still a stud. Greinke, I don't know. Greinke's he's a compiler in my opinion, but good. Charlie Morton, solid. I love having Charlie Morton. Kyle Hendricks, huge year. We'll keep doing it. Incorporated new pitches, a seamer with a little sink action, kind of like Corey Kluber, stud. Max Fried was a great trade pickup from me. He had no other pitchers to keep, so that's huge. And then there is his little boy Boyd, Wainwright, and Lucchesi. So kind of like wasn't Bob's team, maybe it was Mike's team. I love the top five. Love great rotation. I forget who I said this about. Kershaw, Greinke, Morton, Hendricks, Fried is awesome, but then Lucchesi, Boyd, and Wainwright is kind of goes downhill from there, and that's where struggles. Again, I'm not really big on the bullpens, but he filled in this bullpen with Rodriguez and Hicks, Bard, Ottavino. They'll do justice. That'll hold well, and he can make his moves. So that's kind of my thing for Mac. I got him in 5th this year. Pause.
I actually have him in the exact same spot. Mac finished 8th in our 2019 draft. I guess we were just talking about Bobby, right? He finished last actually in 2019.
Yeah, he made a lot of changes at the deadline though.
Yeah, just to circle back. Yeah, set himself up nicely for moving forward. So just to circle back on those, but yeah, I have Mac in the same spot in 5th. I like this team. I think the one area that's going to be an issue is again going to be this outfield. When you're really going to be relying on guys like McCutchen and Dickerson and Pollock as your starting guys, and obviously Austin Hayes is all right. Adam Eaton. I don't know. Nelson Cruz, you got to expect him to have a nice bounce back year. He always does. That Minnesota offense, again, as we said, is going to be great. When Buxton got drafted, I made a comment that I'm glad that he got drafted before he came around to me, because I would have been tempted to take him. And he's a guy that just always ends up on the DL no matter what happens every single year. I know he has him listed on his bench here, but ultimately, I think when you draft a guy like Buxton, you're expecting him to be your everyday center fielder, and he's just not a guy that you can rely on that. So as far as his outfield goes, his outfield is pretty weak. It's the part of his team that I really don't like. But as far as his infield goes and then his starting rotation go, I really do like them. Again, you touched on Kershaw, where are they going to skip him? Is he washed? Is he not the player that he was? Yeah, he's not the player that he was, but he'll probably end up on the DL at some point, for his back. But he'll miss 3 or 4 starts. He'll still make you your 22 starts, 20, 23, 24 starts. He'll be a top 25-ish guy. And, again, same thing with Greinke. Like, he's going to be a top 25 guy. Charlie Morton, probably same thing, top 30-ish type guy. Hendricks, I didn't realize how good Hendricks has been the last couple of seasons. Never been a real fan of him in general, but the guy just produces. I don't see why he can't do it again. Max Fried, young, going to be a stud. That Atlanta rotation is really good, especially if Soroka's back, as we spoke about earlier. If he's back earlier than expected. Matthew Boyd, another guy that I just don't really know what to make of every single season. They have him projected for a pretty nice total for the season. I don't know. I feel like he's a boom or bust guy. I feel like he's either going to hit that 600 mark or he's going to be down in the high 300-ish, low 400. So again, boom or bust. Certainly the standpoint that I've taken with my team. So I understand it and I get it. Matthew Boyd, though, I look more as on the bust side of things than on the boom side of things. And then Wainwright's the same way. I just think Wainwright's a little over the hill at this point. I think Mac is going to be looking for, back end starters as the season progresses. And look, those guys can come along. Maybe Patino comes up this season, and he does have a really nice season. Look, Patino's on the top. I think he's in the top 10 of prospects also. It was a big get it was the big centerpiece around the Blake Snell trade for San Diego and Tampa Bay. Yeah, I don't see why he can't come up and have a nice impact for Mac. So again, I have him in the number 5 spot.
Okay. We're basically, man, we're pretty spot on together. Same look. All right.
Yeah, the biggest difference between us was Bobby's team. I had Bobby higher, and I had obviously myself a little higher than what you did. But yeah, pretty much read this draft very similarly to what you did.
All right. Number 4, I have Soriano, Wolf territory. All right. So I got Soriano. What?
I said, just again, based on how we're sort of seeing things eye to eye, he's where I assumed I had him highlighted before you said it, because I assumed that's where you were going.
Yeah. So I have him as the 4th ranked infield, the worst outfield, and that puts him at the 7th overall offense. 5th ranked starting pitching, 2nd ranked relievers, even with losing Nick Anderson, and the 4th overall pitching. As you see, my theme continues, man. The pitching is very important to me in the rankings. With the deadening on the balls, I think it's going to be important. So, I mean, look, the infield's good. Grandal, fine. Matt Olson leaves a little bit to desired. Mountcastle should have a huge year if he could get any help from guys like my keeper, Santander. DJ was a must keep. He'll, continue to set the table. Solak got named starting second baseman 100% today. They cut Odor outright. That will definitely jump that production up, which that should come in the 568 range. That might get Soriano probably the two best second basemen actually in the league, possibly. Because I know Solak was, 50-50 for a lot of here. Arenado, that was a franchise keeper for Soriano. So tough get. He's not a first rounder anymore, but I mean, solid piece. Alex Baum, I think, is going to have a massive year. That lineup at some point in time, you think has to get going. They just have so many friggin' pieces and they just cannot put it together. I understand that the starting pitching was terrible 2 years ago or 3 years ago. And then 2 years ago, then the relievers were awful last year. So, I mean, I know it's not all the offense, but they have so many goddamn pieces and they just cannot put 2 and 2 together. I don't know. Maybe it's the Bryce Harper effect. Anyway, Baez, again, I know Rizzo and not Salvador Contreras are definitely last year, probably trade deadline pieces. I don't know the status of Baez, but that would be, a definite increase for Soriano there. 453 cents seems really low for Baez. I've never been a Baez guy. He's so damn flashy, and they always look at what he's doing defensively, and that doesn't really relate to fantasy that much if you put a sick tag down the back of someone's helmet. So I don't know. Not for me in terms of stud, but he was on MLB's show cover, wasn't he? Recently.
Yeah. So as far as Baez goes, if you look at his stats from last season, one of the absolute worst offensive seasons from a production standpoint. So for those that play MLB The Show, they obviously update the rankings for guys, for as the season's going on. Yeah. The only reason Javier Baez stayed as a diamond was because he was on the cover of MLB The Show. If he was not on the cover of MLB The Show, his ranking would have gone from, I think he was like an 85 or an 86. He would have gone from that 85 or 86 probably down into the low 70s. Yeah. He was awful last year. I'll get to it when I talk about it, but I think Javier Baez is the most overrated player in Major League Baseball. Great fielder. I don't understand why he ever sees a fastball at the plate. I would never, if I was a pitcher in Major League Baseball facing him, I would never throw him a fastball. Doesn't matter what the count is, never throw him a fastball. He will chase balls in the dirt and outside every single at bat. I don't understand why he ever sees a fastball. Continue.
Okay. I'm with you. I mean, I've never been a bias guy. Tatis, arguably the best shortstop. That's huge. Soriano probably has him. He could keep extending him every time he expires. So, or he's in the prospect now. So he goes prospect to franchise, gets 3, can extend him in the franchise. So, and 32nd rounder is massive. But this is where, this is what makes the difference from me ranking Soriano 4th and higher is here. David Peralta, back end of his career, kind of shot. Lewis Robert, he drafted super, super early. And this is a guy, kind of like I mentioned with my dad with Dozier, like they were on the 3rd or 4th of my sheets, like in projections and rankings, like 410. I think Soriano took him in like the first, 6 or 8 rounds. If he really likes him and that's a steal from him, that's huge. But I think he could have got him way later and could have got some other guys. But Bryce Harper is really the only guy in this entire outfield that's worth talking about. Like Reynolds is not really ownable. Hilliard's not really ownable. Christian Patchy, I don't know what to make him. And Tapia, that's his best DH right now. So the outfield leads a lot to be desired. Pitching. So Plesac, I love Plesac, got a lot of heat merely because of the whole strip club thing or whatever they went, restaurant, bar, whatever with Clevenger, but that doesn't take away from what he did in fantasy baseball. That's what we care about, and, in our conversations right now. And, he did a really good job. He was really good last year. I had him in our COVID league. Awesome. Castillo, beast. Tyler Mahle, another, pick by Soriano. I don't really understand why so early. Again, Robert and Mahle could, be turnaround and pump Soriano from 4-2, 4-3, 4-1. But those 2 guys were drafted way early for, where others are looking. Stroman, solid. Bundy. I think Stroman has a lot to prove this year. I think he's actually going to have a much better year than people think. And I think Soriano noticed that too. That's why he wanted to come get him from me so badly. I had a hard time getting rid of him. I really want to keep Fried and or Stroman, but ended up giving both away. Actually, I thought I improved my team. I don't know. Maybe I didn't. But anyway, I think Stroman's going to have a really good year. Bundy, like again, how he's the top, ranked top 15 and starting pitch this year is crazy. Saval, I like it. I know he had a little rough year last year. Guys start to figure him out. Doesn't have the most overpowering stuff, but he's solid. And Heaney, I've always loved Andrew, but he's always just hurt or something crazy, and you just can't rely on him. And I don't know much about Hernandez. I'm guessing he looks like a prospect, but is going to pitch and they'll probably be solid. But, this is one of the better rotations in terms of, a lot of these teams have 5 and then the back end of 3 is terrible. Or, the teams that we've already ranked maybe have 4 or 3, but he has got a solid, actually, I guess he's got a solid 5 too, because I'm not really sure about Tyler and Heaney and Hernandez. So yeah, so Soriano's kind of 5 too, but for me, he has 5 like everybody else does, but the outfield is really bad, but the infield is really, really good. So I got him at 4. Pause.
So I have Soriano at 6. For me, it was really hard to sort of project what a team like this is going to do. Obviously, the fact that Nick Solak won the starting job today changes predictions a little bit more towards the upside for Soriano. But yeah, I mean Grandal, I never know what to do with him, both from a player standpoint and from a draft standpoint. I never he always puts up solid numbers, but he obviously had the steroid situation and things like that. So you're a little leery about certain things. So yeah, solid player, definitely towards the top of the catcher rankings, but I could very easily see him having a horrible season. Matt Olson, a guy that can produce. Another one of those guys that had a really solid 2019 and then last year just had an awful year. But, like we explained, I'm sort of throwing last year out for a lot of players. And he's one of those guys that I do throw it out for. Mountcastle, again, good guy, good player, solid player. It's just that the Orioles are going to be really bad. Outside of Mancini, we'll see what he is, and Santander, there's really not much else in that lineup. You could see him getting pitched around a lot and really not seeing too many pitches to hit. Swogo at second base. I think this is the best second base tandem in the league in our league. Obviously, DJ is the number 1 second baseman, and now with Solak having won that job, he moves up the ranks as well. Arenado, I think just from the value standpoint, still a great player. Still one of those top 5 third basemen in the league. But just from a value standpoint, I think he's aging a little bit. Obviously, still has a great glove, and we're going to see what he does outside of course, especially with the balls being deadened as well. So he sort of has like a twofold, ball deadening going for him, leaving cores and balls being deadened. So we'll see what happens there. The Cardinals as a whole should be pretty good, but yeah, well, we'll see. It's a little bit. I just think it's a little high for a guy like him currently. Alec Boehm, huge prospect. I don't know what you can really make of him at the moment. Obviously, they're projecting him to have a really big season, but we'll see. As I already spoke about Baez, I just pulled it up. He had an OPS plus of 62 last year. That's almost 50% worse than the average player in Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
That is one of the worst seasons you'll ever see from a starting player in Major League Baseball, let alone a player that's even on your 25th, that's your 25th player on a roster.
Yeah.
So I know I have explained that I'm going to throw out things from him or throw out statistics from last year, but I've just never been a big fan of his in general. I think pitchers are sort of learning what to do with him. And I really think we don't see a reversion back to his 18 and 19 all-star seasons. I think he's going to have another down year. So for that reason, I think the shortstop situation for Soriano might not be as good as what, is ultimately being projected here. Obviously, Tatis is a stud, if not the best shortstop in fantasy and in the league. He's top 3, so not much more to say there. Robert, a guy that has a lot of hype surrounding him, had a great start to his season last year. And then when pitchers made adjustments to him, I believe he hit just over 100 the last 6 weeks of the season. So he's a guy that's going to have to readjust back to what pitchers are doing to him. And, because there's nothing to fall back on him in terms of, 2019 season, we have to take what we have from last year from him. And I think he's going to experience a very big learning curve again. So look for him in the next year or 2 or 3 years to be a stud, but I just don't see it with him this year coming. Never been a big Peralta fan. Bryce Harper, again, I think this is a little high for him, but we'll see. Brian Reynolds, that team is just going to be so bad, and he's like their main guy in that lineup. So outside of, I guess, Brian Hayes and maybe Kevin Newman, but that team's just going to be terrible. Sam Hilliard, borderline unownable. Pache, another guy, big prospect, but really don't know what to make of him at all this season. So I think his outfield is actually more on the bottom side of things. And I'm not big on his offense or on his infield. So the place where I put, the reason why I have him 6th is I really like his starting rotation. Castillo, great. Plesac, as you already said, yeah, he's an asshole, but we don't care if he's an asshole off the field. We care about what he does on the field. Stroman, I think, is going to have a really nice season. Dylan Bundy, again, another really nice season. Seaval, a guy that could go either way, but I think he's also going to have a really nice year. So yeah, I think Soriano might not have like that number 1 stud outside of Castillo, but I think he has 5 guys that are probably going to score above 550 to in that 650 range. So I really think that his rotation is going to carry him, and I have him in the 6th slot.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. All right, number 3 for me is Jorge, Brick City. So, I mean, first and foremost, this is tough because I've never ranked a newcomer this high in my ever in my predictions. I took a couple years off from doing the predictions. I did them every year for a while, but for the most part, we've had the same squad for a really, really long time. And then every now and then we get 1 or 2 transfer in or out. Jay was spending I think 2 weeks to a month in Alaska. So he gave up this team, and this is kind of here as I go. This my predictions for this year will be keepers prevail, and with the team that I ultimately end up picking to win it all, this team and them are arguably have the two best keepers by far. I think they're, super comparable. So, but the down, and I'll explain the downside only to his. So the difference between the team I have to win it all and these keepers is that these keepers are ranked so high that there's not much value in them besides of what they are on the surface. And what I mean by that is like, Mike Trout in the first round. Is Mike Trout a first rounder? Yes, but he's a first round keeper. Is Mookie Betts a second rounder? Yes, but he's a second round keeper. So while you have all these elite players, you're essentially really just going through a refresh draft, and that hinders your ability to pack on players with them. And I think that's ultimately why Jorge ended up third for me, is because, he has Mike Trout as a keeper, Garrett Cole as a keeper, Mookie Betts was a keeper, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is a keeper, Jose Abreu a keeper. But I don't think maybe Jorge had one pick in the first, 5 or 6 rounds. So yes, all those keepers are good and elite, and probably the best, the best keepers. I think from a total point standpoint, if you added all his keepers up, they probably have more keeper points as a whole than anybody in the league. But the team that I have winning it all has a ton of keepers, and none of them are really high. So you're able to supplement in the first few rounds to do that. And that's for me ultimately why, keepers prevail. That's my theme. But this is why Jorge ended up third for me, is because the supplement for me in the draft, I kept texting you, I'm saying, wow, he has a great squad, but I feel like he's ruining by the draft. And I don't think he was ultimately ruining it by who he was picking. He was ruining it because he didn't have a pick for so long that the supplemental players to his team just didn't offer much. And I think we'll go over that. So like Christian Vázquez, nice piece, good catcher, one of the top 7-8 catchers, fine. Jose Abreu, keeper. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., keeper. Now you get to the next two guys. Dylan Moore, in my opinion, is not ownable. Chris Taylor's not ownable. They go through stints where they don't play Taylor for a whole entire week, and then he plays a week, or he plays 3 days of the week and then sits 4. Like, that's not a guy that could be a starter. Dylan Moore is not a guy that could be a starter. Chris Bryant isn't worthy. He's due for a good year. He's due for a comeback. He keeps saying he's in the best shape of his life. He's been saying that for 3-4 years, and he's been, he's a 450 player. Gio Sella, nice pickup, but again, so if you kind of just scroll through Jorge's team, I don't really need to go through every player like I've done everyone else, but his elite players are all his keepers, and then the supplemental players just aren't really that great. But his keepers are so good that it really propels his team to the top here. And ultimately, I think he probably came into the league and overtook the best team available. So infield's is good. Outfield is probably great. What do I have? Did I go over this already? I don't know. Jorge, 8th infield, 2nd outfield, 3rd overall offense, 3rd in starters, 6th in relievers, and 5th in rotation. So this is really the first team that I have that's ranked this high that doesn't have a rotation as high. Gurriel was picked super early. He wasn't worth the pick. Soler was early, not worth the pick. Dickerson, Starlin Marte's, past his time. So just like I said, for me, I don't need to spend much time on this. It was a lot of elite keepers, and I just thought the supplemental pieces to go with them was not very good. If you go to the rotation real quick, I'll just rip through that. Cole, a keeper. Carrasco out for at least 2 months, probably more. I dealt with a hamstring injury this whole fucking year. So, you never know. Some you feels great, then all of a sudden it's gone again, whatever. Giolito is nice. And then here, and this is why also he hinders him side. You have Cole and Giolito, and then Kevin Gossman's a scrub. Chris Bassett is a scrub. Sean Manaea is a scrub. Urquidy scrub, and then Tyreek Scrubble. I don't know. We don't know what he's going to be. So, for me, it was just actually looking back at this, I don't even know how I ended up having him third. This rotation is awful. Jesus. I don't know. I may have to go back and redo this. Maybe I did some math wrong, or I don't know. This got to my end of my thing, but this rotation is really, really bad. But I don't know. For now, I have Jorge at 3, and that's my reasoning for now. Pause.
Yeah, so I actually had Jorge as the best team in the league. I think his high end players, as you spoke about already, are going to carry him through. And I think that the reason why I had him number 1 is just because I think he has the highest floor of any other team in the league. So I think that's the route that I more so went in terms of, how I rank teams, like where I sort of saw the floor and, the difference between that boom and bust type thing. And I think the floor for Jorge is very high. I think Vasquez will end up finishing a top, 6 catcher. Jose Abreu, reigning AL MVP. Vlad Guerrero slimmed down, is crushing the ball in spring. Second base situation is going to have to improve. He could use one of these other pieces that he has to maybe make a deal, or maybe someone pops up that he's able to grab off waiver or something like that. So yeah, as far as second baseman situation goes, I think it's the worst second base situation in the league, but his third base situation is very nice. I think Bryant has a bounce back year. I know he had an awful year last year. I know he's not happy in Chicago. We'll see what happens, but he still has the talent to be in that MVP race. I'm not saying he's going to be the MVP, but if he finished top 10 in MVP voting next year or this year, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Gio Urshela is another guy that might be hindered a little bit by the deadening of baseballs, but he still hits in Yankee Stadium. So I still think that he's going to put up solid numbers going forward. Tim Anderson, I think, is a guy that's going to outperform his projections. This Chicago White Sox lineup and team in general is sort of a juggernaut. Obviously, the loss of Eloy is huge for that lineup, but I still think Anderson is one of those guys that he's going to steal a lot of bases. He's going to get on base a lot. Yeah, he's not going to hit for crazy power. I know it says here he had 21. They're projecting him for 21 home runs. I don't know about 21 home runs, but 15, yes, and he's going to move that offense along at the top of the lineup. Rojas, we'll see what happens there. He's sort of a bottom of the barrel type starting shortstop, but a guy that could put up sneaky numbers. Get on base a lot, maybe steal some bases, drive in some runs. I think the Miami Marlins are going to be better than a lot of people think this year. And then as far as his outfield goes, you can argue that Trout and Betts are the 2 best fantasy outfielders in the game. With the year that Blackmon had last year, it doesn't seem like he's falling off all that much, even though he's getting up there in age. Yes, losing Arenado in that lineup could ultimately hurt him, and that team in general is really bad. But you still have him and Story there, and they're going to get their hits. They hit it. They're at cores, so the deadening of the balls isn't going to. I know I keep harping on about deadening, but it's going to have less of an effect at cores, and he hasn't seen much of a drop off at all in his production. Marte actually had a much better season last year than I thought that he did. I don't see why he can't continue that. Dickerson, especially if Yastrzemski misses any time, he's certainly going to see a lot more time, and that'll be a plus to his stock. Schwarber, I think, is a nice buy low, boom or bust guy where he can absolutely break out and have a nice season. Bobby Bradley, I don't know too much about him, so I'm not going to speak about it. Mikael Franco, another guy that could be a nice piece, spot start here and there. Tyler O'Neill as well. Flores, I mean, look, as much as you want to make fun of him, that he's not very good. He plays a lot of positions and he hits. So a nice piece. So like I said, I think the floor for Jorge is much higher than the other teams in the league, which is why I put him at number 1. And then you're talking about Giolito, Garrett Cole. Whenever Carrasco comes back, he'll be, a very nice piece for him. Look, you can talk about Gossman all you want, but he had a monster season last year. I think he's only going to continue. He's always had high hopes from, the franchises that he's been with. The Orioles had really high hopes for him. I think he's going to have another really good year. Bassett, another guy that had a better season than most people thought, and his sabermetric stats are a little bit better than what he shows just on the normal side of things. So another guy that I think is going to have a nice season. Manea, yeah, I think that's a little high of a projection for him, but still, again, another solid guy. Urquidy, high prospect. They're going to be expecting big things from him, especially with Verlander missing. He's going to be starting the entire season. So, just from the standpoint of being out there every 5 days, he's going to put up stats, and yeah, he's going to have to figure out his bottom of the line rotation. But I mean, there's a lot of teams in here that are going to have to figure it out. So I just think from the standpoint of high floor and still very, very high ceiling, and really studs at the top of that ceiling. That's why I had him number 1 overall.
All right. Number 2, Joe Boo needs a refill. All right, so this is myself. I'm not really going to talk about my own team that much. So I have number 1 infield in the league.
Do you want me to start off, since you don't want to talk about your own team?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Actually.
All right, cool. So I had you at the number 3 team. Really, really like your infield. I think Nick Madrigal is going to have a really nice season this year. Ketel Marte, he's just a solid pro. I really think that, you can really expect this mid 500s from him. Just again, like I said, really solid player. That offense, they'll be all right. They're not a great team, but they still put up runs, so he'll be fine. Kyle Seager, really, really good player. Just have to hope that what the ex-GM out there in Seattle didn't hurt Kyle Seager's confidence at all by telling him, yeah, he's a franchise player, but he's not going to be here for past what his contract is. We'll see what happens, but yeah, again, really solid player. Eduardo Escobar, same thing, solid player, really puts up nice solid numbers, and you'll be good with him. Didi, I think he's going to have another very good season here. Dansby Swanson looks like he's sort of turning around the moniker that he's just a defensive guy, that he can actually hit as well. We had a really nice season last year. I think he builds upon that. Jeff McNeil, your probably favorite player in the league, or if not your favorite player in the league, your top 5 player in the league. He's not going to put up any flashy numbers, but he's going to hit 300. He's going to get on base 370. He'll probably slug close to 500, hit close to that 900 OPS. And yeah, that lineup is going to be good. The Mets are going to be good this year. Victor Reyes, a little bit of a question mark, I would say, for you, but a guy that could certainly do much better than the projections show, and a high upside type guy. Whit Merrifield, I like the fact that he has second base eligibility. Really, really solid guy. Solid to above average there. Alex Verdugo, another guy that is a nice piece, but I think very low. A lower ceiling, but a higher type floor guy. Santander, I think the projection on him is way too low. So I think there's some upside there for you. Jason Hayward, I don't know why his projection is so low. He had a very nice season last year. I know he's getting a little bit older, but yeah, I think solid again. Josh Bell, a guy that should break out in a better lineup, in a better situation. You can never really underestimate what it's like to play for a franchise and an owner that really just does not care about the product he puts out on the field. So to get out of that Pirate situation is going to be a good thing for him, a positive thing for him. He's going to move forward. Then your bench in general, I think you have guys that are going to be solid and be able to use as I know I'm saying the word solid a lot for your team, but that's really just what your team is. It's solid. There's no real flashy guys. There's no real, no real studs, but I don't see any guy on your team that's going to, at the end of the year, we're going to look back and be like, oh, that was a bad pick, or he didn't have a good season. Like every single one of your guys is probably going to be in the top 10 of their position or 12 of their position. And when you're talking about fantasy baseball, you're going to have those guys. Like you have Rizzo, he's going to be top 5. You have Didi, he'll probably be top 8. You have Kyle Seager, he'll probably be top 5. So like you have those guys that are going to stand out, but you don't have those guys that are going to just fall off a cliff and lose you weeks. You're going to win most weeks because your guys are just going to produce what they're going to produce, and that's solid players. And then when you get back to your starting pitching is really good. Marquez has really turned himself. I had him that first year. I wish I would have I would have kept him, but he's really turned himself into a nice starter. Jacob deGrom, no reason to talk about him. He's the top starter in the league. Eflin, I think he's going to have a nice season. Scherzer, not what he used to be, but still top 10-ish starter in the league. Alcantara, I think he's going to be really nice. Brad Keller, again, well, we spoke about the sort of drop off when it comes to starting pitching in the league. He's a guy that you're probably going to be cycling out for other starters throughout the year. So, like I said, I have you at number 3 because your team is just solid and your starting pitching is really nice.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue. That's the way I draft. That's the way I have my team every year. I just try to go for solid and balance. I like consistency. I'll say, like, hey, I mean, I openly admitted in the intro, I got caught up in, I don't know if it was commissionering or just lack of attention, which I highly doubt because I look forward to baseball every year. But man, I was all about pitching and the deadening of the baseball and everything. And I went in and I made trades with Soriano, made trades with McIndoe to get release from Scherzer so I could repick him and also get better keepers. And then before I knew it, man, to fill up the last 3 slots, there was nobody. I mean, I didn't want Brad Keller. And I'm taking a shot on Peralta. So, I got caught off guard, and that's just bad drafting by me. I'm known to live on the waiver wire and find the guys. And we talked about earlier, I'm known to pick up, the Savellis and the Biebers and Alcantara. And I mean, there's 2 or 3 every year. Sometimes it bites me in the ass because they shut those pitchers down when the playoffs come, and then I'm fucked. And sometimes it helps me out, but those will be, those will replace the Kellers, and maybe Peralta will be great. I lost Gresham already, which is huge because Reyes and Hayward probably wouldn't be in there. That's a keeper of mine. So I don't know. Again, hamstring injury. I don't know. Mine lingered on for 6 months this year. I played at 20% for the most part. I don't know. My dad will tell you I probably played 10-20% the whole year until Myrtle and Worlds, and I was finally healthy, but healthy with the hamstring at least. And so anyway, so I don't know. Those linger on. Sometimes they don't. I need him back sooner than later because my outfield's okay, but I want those guys playing positions, and I didn't plan on starting Seager Escobar, but it's kind of how it ended. I also, another commissioning and bad drafting mistake is I didn't even realize I had keepers in 16, 17, 18 because of trades I made that got me out of some early round keepers. And I had a whole list and I was ready to rock and roll and get Will Smith and forget who the other 2 guys were. And all of a sudden I have 3 straight keepers and everybody that I had on my list that I wanted got taken. So that affected my team big time too. And that's pretty much it. But the way you see my team is the way I hope people see my team, because that's always the way I draft, is just consistency. And that's it. So without further ado, our last team, and nice, what we get done by 9 here, is Slippin' Jimmy O'Rourke. So this is the highest I've ever probably put O'Rourke. For me, my gripe with O'Rourke every year is that he has tons of prospects, and he loads up on prospects, and he loads up on talent, and him and I will talk back and forth about his other leagues and dynasty guys and stuff, but he gets so enthroned and graveled in those prospects that, to me, it ends up having an ill effect on his team at the end of the day. But with the theme of the keepers prevail, this is what I spoke about Jorge, where he has elite keepers, but all his keepers are high. O'Rourke's keepers are elite, and none of them are high rounds. So he's able to supplement his entire team this year. And to me, that made a massive difference. Acuna, not a first rounder. Yelich is a keeper, not a first rounder, not a second rounder, not a third rounder, not a fourth rounder. So he's getting to draft guys like Manny Machado and Jose Altuve. While I don't agree with him, but whatever. Marcus Semien, all of these guys. Scroll down a little bit just to his pitching real quick. Who else? Glasnow, don't believe it. Corbin Burns. So McCullers, who I think is going to have a huge year, we'll talk about. But all of these guys, to my point, is that he's using these guys as supplemental players. And he has the ability to do that because the keepers that he have so much value that they're later in the round. And that's really what made the difference for me is, he has elite keepers and arguably the best keepers in the league. Maybe not if you add up all the total points, Jorge's are better. But if you added up the evaluation points of Orc's keepers, I think Orc would blow Jorge's away in terms of, our evaluation trade chart. So I have Orc at, I should call him Orc on the thing, but I'll call it Rourke at 9, 9th infield, best outfield, and overall second best offense, second best starting pitching staff, third best bullpen, second best pitching staff, which makes to him the champion, number one team in the league. I'll do his pitching while you're on it. Glass now stud. Corbin Burns, I think, is going to be a stud. Bauer, stud. McCullers, I think, is going to have a massive year. Snell, while I hate him, is awesome. And Bueller, he is the only one in the league, in my opinion. Maybe I have 6, but my 6th guy is questionable. I also think Montgomery's going to have a huge year. I should have kept him in the 35th, but Orc has arguably 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys. You could argue 6, definitely 6 elite starting pitchers, if not 7, in a year where the ball is going to be dead. And that's a massive difference maker as I'm riding pitching this year. So to me, he's got the best staff in the league. If you scroll up to his offense, infield, not great, but the outfield's elite. Royce Hoskins is all right. Catcher needs a lot to be desired. Doesn't really matter. You could find somebody. CJ Cron's a bum. I think Altuve sucks. Gavin Lux should just get production just from being the offense. Same thing with Machado. Both of them are not as good as they, Lux is not as good as he's supposed to be. Machado's not as good as he used to be, but they're both in elite offenses and will get production merely from being in them. I think Semion's going to have a massive year. If Orc didn't take him in that round when me and him were discussing it about who he should take, and while he was at softball, I was going to take him soon. I just think Toronto, like I said, I think that if you look at Toronto's up to down offense, they should have the best offense in the league. I don't know if they'll all produce the way they should. I know San Diego and the Dodgers have proven their offenses, whereas Toronto has not, but I just think top to bottom they do. And I think Semien should benefit from that. I know people are also riding him on the 2019, like they do Polanco, where it was a standout year and he hasn't done shit besides his other years, but I don't know, man. Spring with Springer and Bichette and Vlad Guerrero and Skinny. I don't know, man. I think they're going to rake Rowdy Tellez, rips righties. Oh, he's just so sloppy. Anyway, Simmons, decent. Soto is good, man. Acuna, good. Yelich is great. Soto, Acuna, again, Soto, keeper, and I think it's like 31st rounder from, so and that's my point. And that's the difference. Soto, Acuna, Yelich, Mancini should have a great year, literally getting, hit down in the projections merely because he had cancer the year before. Kyle Tucker, elite, and, Iglesias and that's a pretty nice piece to have as a DH with, Ohtani raking and Trout always just rakes and Rendon in his first full year there. So, and then he has his prospects there. My one comment for him would be, and I know he's listening, he commented earlier and maybe he logged off now, but I'm sure he'll listen later, is you finally got your prospects, the Acuñas, the Sotos, the Yelich, not really a prospect, whatever, Glass now, and those guys, you finally got them into a position where now they're in their prime. Build around them and win yourself a title. Stop going after more prospects. And that would be my tip to Work, and that's what I tell him every time I see him. You got to win one year. I don't want to hear about the guys you have that are going to win one. And he's got the ability to do so this year, because I think this is by and away the best team in the league. And you just got to do supplementation with proven players and not hold on to guys just because they might help them out 5-10 years from now. Pause. Wrap us up, bud.
Yeah, not much else to say. Starting pitching, definitely I think the best rotation in the league. I guess the one question mark would be, not that he's a question mark, but Glass now. He showed signs of brilliance, but then he also showed signs of getting shelled. So he's going to have to adjust, just like every young player has to. There's film on him now, so People are going to know how to attack him better, and he's just going to have to adjust back. But so I think he'll have a really, really nice season. He's too talented not to. So yeah, not much else to say on the starting pitching front. His starters are really, really good. Definitely the best rotation in the league. Also, I think the best outfield in the league. When you have Soto, Acuna, and Yelich, there's really tough to argue anyone else. Soto might be the best hitter in baseball. After a season last year, he had a historical, in terms of production, one of those historical years, just like Bryce Harper did a few years back, things like that. So, and Juan Soto is what, 22 years old. If he can somehow progress from this, we could have another, we can be like, we're already looking at Trout as probably going to go down as one of the 10 best players of all time, 15 best players of all time. We can have the next generation be Juan Soto, fitting into that, one of the 10 best players of all time, or I should say hitters of all time, because his fielding leaves a little bit to be desired. But, as far as a hitter goes, he could ultimately end up being the next, like the next Mike Trout, where he's going, this generation's top 10 player of all time or top 15 player of all time. I think the first base situation might be where his downfall is a little bit, but I mean, as far as the rest of his team goes, I don't see too many holes. I have him at number 2, and I think it's I think the top 3 that we listed here, we both have them the same top 3, but just in different orders. I think the top 3 are, there's a little bit of a drop off when it comes to, the next tier of teams in the league. I think the top 3 are clearly the top 3. And then I think you can sort of make an argument from 4 through 8. You could sort of toss them into a hat, throw them up in the air, and they can fall any which way, and that's how they'll fall. And then unfortunately, I think the bottom 2 teams are, in my opinion, the bottom 2 teams. But yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting season. I'll let you have the last word, since this is your show. You're the commish. But as far as I go, my rankings: Jorge, O'Rourke, you, Olsen, number 3, Bobby 4, Mac 5, Soriano 6, myself 7, Mike 8, your father Rick 9, and Jimmy number 10. So I want to just thank everybody for listening. It was fun to do this, get back on the show with you. I know we both talk about a lot how we missed the old days, and when you didn't have a kid, and we didn't have as busy a lives, where we were doing our radio show twice a week, and it was a lot of fun. But it was nice to do this again. I'm glad you thought of it, and now with the technology, we're able to stream it so everyone can see our faces. So it was fun. I appreciate it, and thank you.
Yeah, man. No, I agree. This was awesome. I definitely miss doing Uncut Sports Talk. I think we got I actually went in the folder the other day. I think we got through like 50 something episodes, 56 episodes. It's crazy to think about. Sometimes I go back and listen to some of them. It's pretty cool. But yeah, so all right. I have Jimmy 10, Paz 9, Dad 8, Mike 7, Bobby 6, Mac 5, Soriano 4, Jorge 3, myself 2, O'Rourke number 1. This was fun, man. It's so much better than typing Microsoft Word. We probably went a lot longer. I think we told your sister an hour and a half. I feel bad. I hope she's not sleeping, as she was helping us out here with the premium host and recording. But this was so much better than typing Microsoft Word. I had a lot of fun. We'll definitely add more human ideas to it later. Do the slow roll draft. This kind of backed us up into opening day, and just have other stuff going on. My pregnant wife coming up. So yeah, man, this was fun. It was great to get back on. And I think that's a wrap, man. I hope everyone enjoyed listening. I saw there was between like 3 and 7 people on at a time, and we'll rip this into a recording, or it's going to be ripped into a recording, and we'll send that link out. And if you missed yourself or any of the other ones you want to listen to, I mean, feel free to kill 2.5 hours of work listening to us BS. So that's it. Uncut Sports Talk. What we used to have a fucking cool outro, but Rhino and Paz signing off till 2022 predictions. Later.